As the gentle current of time begin to ripple, allow your consciousness to softly unfurl and drift, like a lone feather on a calm breeze, toward a distant, enigmatic era, the Middle Ages. Envision a landscape where the very stones seem to breathe with ancient stories, a time when colossal cathedrals, with their spires reaching devoutly toward the heavens, silently dominated the skyline. These magnificent structures, guardians of countless generations, whispered tales not only of profound devotion, but also of an artistry that bordered on the miraculous. Can you hear, in the very depths of your imagination, the faint, resonant peal of monastery bells, their melancholic yet soothing chimes gracefully carrying across verdant, rolling hills, or perhaps the hushed, almost reverent murmurs emanating from within the hallowed confines of ancient abbeys, where sacred knowledge was meticulously preserved and beauty was painstakingly, lovingly crafted? Have you ever truly paused in the quiet solitude of your thoughts to genuinely ponder the lives of those unassuming souls who, with their gifted hands and unwavering dedication, breathed vibrant life, exquisite color, and tangible form into the vast canvas of the medieval world? Who were these remarkable individuals who, amidst an age often perceived as being steeped in both profound shadow and an equally profound, unwavering faith, dare to conceive and meticulously execute the magnificent works of art that continue, even in our modern era, to inspire such a profound sense of awe and wonder within us today? It's crucial to understand that these were not the artists as we conceptualize them in our contemporary understanding. Solitary, often eccentric geniuses celebrated for their unique, individualistic brilliance and signed masterpieces. Far from it. Instead, they were, for the most part, humble artisans, skilled craftsmen and women whose identities were frequently, almost by design, subsumed by the grand, collective endeavor of their workshops, their guilds, or, most importantly, by the overarching glory of God. Their personal recognition was secondary, almost irrelevant, to the sacred purpose of their creations. Our tranquil journey tonight will gently, serenely, embark upon an exploration of the daily existence of these often unsung medieval creators. We will softly delve into the intricate rhythms of their routines, the nuanced challenges they stoically face in a world so vastly, fundamentally different from our own fast-paced, technologically driven existence, and the absolutely crucial, often understated, significance of their monumental contributions to a society profoundly shaped by intense religious fervor, by rigid social hierarchies, and by the gradual, complex emergence of intricate new social and economic structures. For a brief interlude, allow yourself to set aside the familiar grand narratives of powerful kings and queens, of epic battles and political intrigue. Instead, let us shift our focus, our gentle gaze, towards quiet, almost meditative dedication of those whose anonymous hands painstakingly shaped the very visual, spiritual, and intellectual landscape of their time. Consider, for a moment, the palpable atmosphere of their working environment. The soft, dancing flicker of candlelight casting long, shifting shadows as illuminated a craftsman's deeply concentrated face, revealing every line of his focused intensity as he meticulously carved a delicate, intricate detail into a piece of seasoned wood. The vibrant, almost living hues being painstakingly layered onto a pristine manuscript page within serene, hushed confines of monastic scriptorium, where silence was a form of prayer, or the rhythmic, almost hypnotic tap-tap-tap of a stonemason's chisel against the cold, unyielding, yet ultimately malleable stone of a soaring cathedral facade, each strike bringing the rough material closer to its intended form. These were not merely sounds or sights. They were the very fabric of their lives, the sensory symphony that formed the constant, comforting, yet demanding backdrop of their daily existence. We will gently uncover precisely how these dedicated artisans acquire their formidable trades, often through many, many arduous years of patient, sometimes grueling apprenticeship. Imagine a young boy, perhaps 7 or 8 years old, leaving his family to live and learn under the strict tutelage of a master craftsman, absorbing the vast, accumulated knowledge and the intricate, often jealously guarded techniques passed down not through books, but directly through generations, from master to apprentice, hands teaching hands. This was a learning process rooted in observation, repetition, and almost spiritual dedication to mastering the craft. We will explore the absolutely vital, foundational role of guilds, the powerful medieval associations that served as both the guardians and the regulators of their specific professions. These guilds were far more than just trade unions. They provided structure, ensured quality, protected their members from competition, and fostered a deep sense of camaraderie, mutual support, and shared identity within their respective communities. They were a cornerstone of medieval social and economic life. The art they so reverently produced was, almost without exception, deeply and inextricably intertwined with the singular, dominant, and all-encompassing force of the era, the Christian Church. From the breathtaking, almost otherworldly stained glass windows that filtered ethereal, multicolored light into the vast, echoing interiors of colossal cathedrals, transforming mere sunlight into a divine presence, to the intricate, often startlingly lifelike sculptures adorning grand portals and sacred altarpieces, to the stunningly beautiful, meticulously illuminated pages of sacred religious texts. Each stroke of the brush, each chisel mark, each hammered piece of metal, their collective work, served a primary, overarching purpose: to communicate complex religious narratives to a largely illiterate populace, to inspire profound devotion and spiritual awe, and to educate the faithful about the tenets of their belief. Their art was, in essence, a visual sermon, a silent prayer rendered in tangible form. So, I invite you now to allow your eyes to gently close and to prepare your mind to embark on this tranquil, contemplative exploration. Let the evocative images of a bygone era softly, unhurriedly unfold within the sanctuary of your thoughts. Picture the medieval world, not merely as a dry, academic historical period, but as a vibrantly lived reality for these dedicated, often anonymous creators. Feel, in your mind's eye, the imagined way of the cold stone they so patiently worked. See the exquisite gleam of the precious metals they painstakingly shaped, and imagine the sheer intensity of their unwavering focus as they labored tirelessly to bring profound beauty and deep, spiritual meaning to their entire world. Allow the subtle, comforting echoes of their timeless craftsmanship to gently soothe your thoughts, to quiet the bustling anxieties of your day, and to softly guide you toward a truly peaceful and restorative slumber. As our journey deeper into medieval world unfolds, let us gently shift our focus from the broad strokes of introduction to the intricate, fascinating details of the lives of these creators. In this era, the concept of the artist as a celebrated, individual genius, a solitary figure driven by personal vision, was largely absent. This is a crucial distinction from how we perceive artistic creation today. Instead, the vast majority of those who built and adorned the medieval world were known as artisans or craftsmen. Their identity was deeply intertwined with their skill, their specific trade, and most importantly, their collective belonging to powerful social and economic structures known as guilds. Imagine, if you will, the bustling, vibrant heart of a medieval town, not the quiet, secluded monasteries we spoke of earlier, but the workshops nestled within narrow, cobbled streets. Here, the air might be thick with the scent of freshly cut wood, the acrid tang of pigments, or the metallic ring of a hammer on an anvil. These were the primary locales of creation, far removed from the pristine, white-walled galleries of today. Most often, the artisan's home was also their workshop, a practical necessity in a world where living and working spaces were inextricably linked. But larger, more specialized workshops, particularly for monumental projects like cathedrals, would also serve as bustling hubs of activity. The guild system was a bedrock of medieval craftsmanship, a network of highly organized associations that regulated virtually every aspect of a specific trade. Think of them as a combination of a modern trade union, a professional body, a social club, and even a spiritual fraternity. Membership in a guild was not merely a choice. It was a necessity for anyone aspiring to practice a recognized craft. Each guild, be it for masons, painters, goldsmiths, illuminators, or sculptors, had its own set of strict rules, traditions, and an established hierarchy that dictated the path from novice to master. At the very bottom of this hierarchy was the apprentice, a young boy, sometimes as young as 7 or 8, would be formally indentured to a master craftsman for a period typically ranging from 7 to 12 years. This was a complete immersion, often involving living with a master's family, assisting with household chores, and performing the most rudimentary tasks in a workshop. The apprentice's days were long, filled with repetitive, often tedious work. Grinding pigments, preparing surfaces, cleaning tools, fetching materials. But through this rote learning, they absorbed the fundamental disciplines of their craft. There were no art schools in the modern sense. Learning was experiential, passed directly from hand to hand, eye to eye, through observation and relentless practice. Imagine the sheer patience required, the countless hours spent repeating a motion until it became second nature, the silent absorption of techniques through observation rather than explicit instruction. After completing their apprenticeship, the young artisan would become a journeyman or official in some contexts. The word journeyman literally means day man, referring to the fact that they were paid by the day rather than being tied to a single master. This was a crucial phase of their career. A journeyman would often travel, working for various masters in different towns or cities, thereby broadening their skills and exposing themselves to different regional styles and techniques. This period of travel was vital for professional development, akin to a modern-day artist seeking inspiration and new influences. It was a time of honing their craft, gaining experience, and saving money. The ultimate goal for most artisans was to become a master. To achieve this esteemed status, a journeyman had to prove their exceptional skill and understanding of the craft. This typically involved creating a masterpiece, yes, the origin of the term, a significant work of art that demonstrated their mastery of all aspects of the trade. This masterpiece would be judged by the existing masters of the guild. If approved, the journeyman would pay a fee, swear an oath, and finally be admitted into the ranks of the masters. As a master, they could then establish their own workshop, take on apprentices, and sell their goods directly. They held significant prestige within their community and played a vital role in maintaining the guild's standards and traditions. The nature of the work itself was profoundly shaped by the prevailing religious and social order. In a predominantly illiterate society, art served as a powerful visual language. The vast majority of artistic output had religious purposes. Monumental frescoes adorning church walls, vibrant stained glass windows depicting biblical scenes, intricate altarpieces, delicate illuminated manuscripts filled with sacred texts, and countless devotional sculptures. The creation of these works was seen not merely as a job, but often as an act of devotion in itself, a way to glorify God and contribute to the spiritual well-being of the community. Imagine the meditative quiet of scriptorium, where monks and lay scribes meticulously copied and illuminated texts, each tiny brushstroke on the parchment an act of reverence. Or consider the collective effort on a cathedral site, where hundreds of masons, carvers, glaziers, and sculptors worked in harmony, each contributing their part to a structure designed to inspire awe and draw the faithful closer to the divine. The very essence of their creative process was rooted in repetition and the pursuit of technical perfection, rather than individual innovation in the modern sense. Artisans would copy existing models, follow established iconographies, and adhere to specific stylistic conventions dictated by the church or local traditions. This wasn't seen as a lack of originality, but as a commitment to continuity and the transmission of sacred knowledge. The beauty lay in the execution, the flawless technique, the vibrant colors, and precise rendition of sacred forms. The focus was on the message, the divine subject matter, rather than the personal expression of the artist. In this world, humility was a virtue, and the work was for the glory of God, not personal fame. This structured, communal approach to art production created a sense of shared purpose and collective responsibility. The sounds within these workshops were not just clatter of tools, but the quiet hum of intense concentration, the murmur of instruction, and perhaps the low chanting of prayers. The aroma might be of wet plaster, linseed oil, or the subtle scent of drying parchment. It was a world where art was not separate from life, but deeply integrated into the fabric of daily existence, a testament to skill, devotion, and the enduring power of community. As we continue our gentle descent into the medieval world, let's now focus on the tangible, sensory realities of the artisan's daily existence. Beyond the guild structures and the overarching devotion, what was it truly like to be a creator in this distant age? Imagine the early morning light filtering through the small, often unglazed windows of a workshop, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air, and revealing an array of tools and materials that defined their craft. The materials themselves were a universe apart from what modern artists use. There were no art supply stores, no pre-mixed tubes of paint. Every pigment had to be painstakingly sourced, often from vast distances, and then meticulously prepared. Consider the vibrant blues found in so many medieval illuminations and stained glass. These often came from lapis lazuli, a precious stone mined thousands of miles away in Afghanistan, transported across continents at immense cost. This stone would be ground into an incredibly fine powder, a laborious process that could take days, and then mixed with binding agent. Other colors came from the earth itself. Ochres for yellows and reds, terra verde for greens. Plants provided a spectrum of dyes. Woad for blue, madder for red, weld for yellow. Even insects were a source, like the cochineal beetle for deep crimson. Imagine the pungent aroma of these natural dyes, the gritty feel of finely ground minerals, the earthy scent of plant extracts, a rich palette derived directly from nature. The binding agents for pigments varied by technique. For frescoes, used to adorn vast church walls, pigments were mixed with water and applied directly to wet plaster. This demanding technique required speed and precision as the plaster would dry, permanently embedding the color. For tempera painting, commonly used on wooden panels or manuscripts, the primary binder was egg yolk mixed with water and sometimes a touch of vinegar. This created a durable, fast-drying paint that allowed for incredible detail and luminosity. The preparation of these materials was an art in itself, passed down through generations, often guarded as family or workshop secrets. Imagine the careful cracking of eggs, the separation of the yolk, the precise mixing to achieve the perfect consistency, a ritual repeated countless times. Beyond pigments, the surfaces themselves required immense preparation. For illuminated manuscripts, the most luxurious books were written and painted on parchment or vellum, meticulously prepared animal skins, sheep, goat, or calf. Imagine the arduous process. Cleaning, stretching, scraping, and polishing the skin until it was incredibly thin, smooth, and translucent, ready to receive the delicate strokes of a scribe's quill and an illuminator's brush. This was a costly and time-consuming process, reflecting the immense value placed on these handcrafted books. For sculpture, the choice was often stone, limestone, sandstone, marble, depending on regional availability, or wood, oak, walnut, limewood, carefully seasoned to prevent cracking. Metalwork involved the laborious forging, hammering, and often gilding of iron, bronze, silver, and gold. The sheer physical effort required to transform raw materials into works of art was immense. Now, let's consider the conditions of their labor. These were not climate-controlled studios. Workshops could be drafty, cold in winter, and stiflingly hot in summer. Lighting was rudimentary, primarily relying on natural daylight filtering through small windows. As dusk fell, work often continued by the flickering, smoky light of candles or oil lamps, casting dramatic shadows and demanding keen eyesight and unwavering focus. Imagine the strain on their eyes, the constant need for precision in dim light, the smell of wax and smoke filling the air. There were no ergonomic chairs or sophisticated tools. Artisans often worked hunched over, their bodies contorted into uncomfortable positions for hours on end, leading to chronic aches and pains. The repetition of specific movements, like the constant hammering of a smith or the intricate brushwork of an illuminator, would lead to specialized physical traits, but also to eventual wear and tear on their bodies. The working day was long, dictated by the sun and the demands of the commission. Work began at dawn and continued until dusk, often 6 days a week. There were breaks for meals, often simple and communal, shared with fellow apprentices, journeymen, and the master's family. Life was deeply integrated with work. There was no clear separation between professional and personal spheres. This constant immersion meant that the craft was not just a job, but a way of life, a fundamental aspect of their identity. Perhaps one of the most striking aspects of medieval artistry, especially to our modern sensibilities, was a pervasive anonymity of the creators. The vast majority of medieval artworks, even monumental ones like entire cathedrals, were unsigned. This was not due to lack of pride or skill, but stemmed from several deeply ingrained cultural and religious beliefs. Firstly, the act of creation was often seen as an act of humility and devotion to God. The glory belonged to the divine, not to the mortal hand that merely facilitated its manifestation. The artist was a humble vessel, a channel for God's inspiration. To sign one's work could be perceived as an act of ego, detracting from the sacred purpose. Secondly, the collective nature of the guild system reinforced this anonymity. A work of art was often the product of an entire workshop, with different hands contributing different stages. The master designing, the journeyman executing specific sections, the apprentice preparing materials. It was a communal effort, a shared responsibility, rather than the singular vision of an individual. The signature was often a unique style of a workshop, recognizable to contemporaries, rather than a personal mark. However, while widespread, anonymity was not absolute. There were rare exceptions where an artist's name was recorded, often due to extraordinary skill, patronage from a powerful figure, or unique circumstance. These instances provide us with tantalizing glimpses into individual lives. For example, some master masons or architects of cathedrals might have their names subtly inscribed in a hidden corner or documented in church records. Their fame was usually localized within their town or among those who commissioned their work, rather than widespread. The prestige they garnered was a testament to their exceptional skill and the quality of their contributions to the community, not a stepping stone to personal celebrity. The rewards for their labor were also fundamentally different. While masters could achieve a comfortable living, possibly owning property and employing others, wealth in the modern sense was rarely the primary motivator. Their recompense often included food, lodging, protection, and security within the guild system. More importantly, there was a profound satisfaction of a job well done, of contributing to the spiritual fabric of their society, and the belief that their dedicated work was contributing to the salvation of their own soul. In a world where faith permeated every aspect of life, the spiritual reward was often paramount. So, as we reflect on the daily lives of these medieval creators, we see a picture of immense dedication, physical endurance, and a deep connection to their materials and their faith. They work without the promise of individual fame, often in challenging conditions, but with profound sense of purpose. Their hands, though largely anonymous to us, shape the enduring artistic legacy of an entire age, leaving behind a silent testament to their unwavering skill and devotion. As our tranquil journey through the medieval artisan's world draws to a close, let us now turn our thoughts to the profound and enduring legacy left behind by these remarkable, often anonymous creators. They lived in an age where the concept of individual artistic fame was largely non-existent, where their work was often seen as an act of service and devotion rather than personal expression. Yet, the sheer volume, beauty, and spiritual depth of their collective output speak volumes, resonating across centuries and continuing to illuminate our understanding of a pivotal period in human history. Imagine, for a moment, the sheer passage of time. Empires have risen and fallen. Technologies have transformed societies beyond recognition, and cultures have evolved in countless ways. Yet, the cathedrals these artisans built still stand, their immense stone structures defying gravity and time. The light filtering through their stained glass windows continues to cast ethereal, multicolored patterns on ancient floors, just as it did for medieval worshippers. The intricate sculptures on their facades, though weathered by centuries of wind and rain, still tell biblical stories with expressive faces and detailed drapery. These monuments are not just buildings. They are living testaments to an unwavering faith and an extraordinary collective skill. Each carved gargoyle, each meticulously placed stone, each vibrant panel of glass represents countless hours of dedicated labor by hands that have long since turned to dust. Their illuminated manuscripts, handcrafted on precious parchment, have survived the ravages of time in quiet monastic libraries and grand collections. Each page, a miniature universe of vibrant colors and intricate details, still whispers tales of saints, kings, and everyday life. Think of the deep blues, vibrant reds, and shimmering golds that leap from the pages, applied with brushes made from animal hair, meticulously crafted by these anonymous painters. These books were not merely texts. They were objects of immense beauty and spiritual power, designed to inspire reverence and make sacred words even more divine. To hold one today is to feel a tangible connection to the past, to the hands that so lovingly created it. These artists, though largely unnamed, were the true architects of the medieval imagination. Through their work, they brought stories from the Bible to life for a largely illiterate population, making abstract theological concepts tangible and relatable. They shaped the visual language of an entire era, influencing everything from the way people prayed to how they understood the cosmos. Their art was a form of communication, a medium through which faith, moral lessons, and cultural values were powerfully transmitted from generation to generation. Consider the resilience and unwavering devotion of these creators. They worked in conditions that would be considered harsh by modern standards. Cold workshops, rudimentary tools, and often under intense pressure to complete massive projects on strict deadlines. They faced physical hardships, using strong acids, grinding toxic pigments, and enduring long hours of physically demanding labor. Yet, they persevered, driven by a profound sense of purpose. For many, their work was a form of prayer, a means of earning salvation, a tangible contribution to the divine realm on earth. Every detail, no matter how small or hidden, was rendered with meticulous care, not because it would be seen by human eyes, but because it was seen by God. This belief in divine observation elevated their craft from mere labor to an act of sacred offering. Their legacy is not found in celebrity biographies or signed masterpieces hanging in museums, though some rare signed works do exist, offering fleeting glimpses of individual recognition. Instead, their legacy is woven into the very fabric of Europe's landscape and cultural heritage. It's in the quiet majesty of a Gothic cathedral at twilight, in the shimmering gold of an ancient icon, in the intricate patterns of a medieval tapestry. It's in the echoes of their chisels and brushes that still resonate within the stones and pages they created. As we conclude this peaceful exploration, let us take a moment to truly appreciate the profound impact of these often overlooked men and women. Their lives, though seemingly simple and rooted in relentless toil, left an eternal mark on humanity. They taught us that true beauty often arises from dedication and communal effort, that the greatest works can emerge from humble hands guided by deep conviction. Their silence, their anonymity, makes their achievements all the more remarkable, forcing us to focus not on the Creator, but on the enduring power and spiritual message of creation itself. May the stillness of this ancient time and the enduring beauty of the medieval creations we've explored now gently guide your thoughts. May the image of light filtering through stained glass, or the quiet dedication of scribe illuminating a sacred page, bring a sense of peace to your mind. Allow these quiet reflections to soothe your spirit and lead you into a truly restful slumber. Good night. As the gentle twilight deepens and the world outside begins its slow hush, allow your thoughts to drift back in time, over 5 centuries ago, to a land bathed in the soft, golden light of the early Italian Renaissance. Picture a serene landscape of rolling Tuscan hills, dotted with olive groves and vineyards, leading to the bustling, vibrant heart of Florence. It is here, in the city of burgeoning genius, that our story truly begins, though its first breath was drawn in a small, more rustic town called Caprese, high in the Apennine Mountains. This is where Michelangelo di Lodovico Buonarroti Simoni entered the world in March of 1475, not into a family of artists or artisans, but into one of minor nobility, their fortunes somewhat diminished, yet still fiercely proud of their lineage. Imagine young Michelangelo as a boy, far removed from the marble dust and turpentine scent that would later define his existence. His earliest years were spent not in the Buonarroti family home, but with a wet nurse whose husband was a stonecutter. Perhaps it was there, amidst the rhythmic chipping of hammers against stone, the fine white powder settling on every surface, and the earthy smell of freshly quarried rock, that the very first seeds of his extraordinary destiny were sown. Could the faint whispers of chisels and the tactile presence of raw material have imprinted themselves on his subconscious, long before he could even comprehend their meaning? It's a peaceful thought, a quiet suggestion of fate unfolding. As he grew, returning to Florence, the expectations of his father, Lodovico, were clear and firm. Lodovico, a man keenly aware of his family's noble, if fading status, held a deep disdain for the arts as a profession. For him, the calling of a painter or sculptor was a manual trade, suitable only for commoners, far beneath the dignity of a Buonarroti. He envisioned a future for his son steeped in scholarship, perhaps law or commerce, a path that would restore the family's prestige and ensure a respectable, intellectual livelihood. This fundamental clash of wills, this quiet tension between expectation and innate inclination, will become an early, defining theme in Michelangelo's young life. Can you hear the earnest yet firm voice of a father attempting to steer his son away from what he perceived as a humble, undignified pursuit, urging him towards books and ledgers instead of chalk and clay? But even then, a stubborn, unyielding fascination pulsed within the boy. Michelangelo wasn't drawn to the dusty scrolls or the intricacies of arithmetic. His gaze was captivated by lines, by forms, by the very act of creation. He would spend countless hours sketching, drawing, his hands itching to bring to life the images that danced in his mind's eye. Imagine the quiet rebellion in his heart, the persistent urge that defied parental decrees. He was, in essence, a child who saw the world not as it was, but as it could be sculpted, painted, rendered in magnificent detail. His stubborn refusal to follow a prescribed path was not defined for its own sake, but an irresistible pull towards his true calling, a magnetic force he could neither understand nor deny. Despite his father's strong objections and even physical chastisement, Michelangelo's talent was too bright to be contained. At the tender age of 13, a pivotal moment arrived. Against his father's wishes, he was apprenticed to Domenico Ghirlandaio, one of the most prominent and successful painters in Florence at the time. Ghirlandaio's workshop was a bustling hub, a crucible where the techniques of fresco painting, drawing, and composition were meticulously taught and perfected. It was a rigorous environment, demanding dedication and discipline. Imagine the smells of Ghirlandaio's studio, the pungent odor of wet plaster, the earthy scent of ground pigments, the faint metallic tang of newly sharpened charcoal. Envision the young Michelangelo, observing, absorbing, his keen eyes missing nothing as he learned to prepare pigments, stretch canvases, and master the demanding art of applying paint to damp plaster walls before they dried. Though he spent only about a year in Ghirlandaio's workshop, a remarkably short period for such an apprenticeship, it was a crucial exposure. He quickly absorbed the technical foundations of painting, demonstrating an uncanny speed and precision that astonished his master. It said that Ghirlandaio was so impressed, and perhaps a little intimidated by his pupil's rapid progress, that he even paid Michelangelo for his work, an unusual arrangement for an apprentice. This brief, intense period laid a vital groundwork, giving him a comprehensive understanding of pictorial composition and the human form, knowledge that would later inform even his most sculptural works. Yet, it was not the flat canvas that truly called to his soul. His deepest yearning was for the three-dimensional, for the tactile resistance and sublime potential of stone. This yearning would soon lead him to the place where his true artistic education would blossom, the Medici Garden of San Marco. This wasn't merely a garden. It was an informal academy established by Lorenzo de' Medici, the Magnificent, the de facto ruler of Florence and one of the most enlightened patrons of the Renaissance. Lorenzo, with his discerning eye for talent, had gathered a collection of classical Greek and Roman sculptures there, making them available for young aspiring artists to study, copy, and draw inspiration from. It was in this serene, almost sacred space, filled with ancient marble gods and heroes, that Michelangelo truly found his path. Under the guidance of Bertoldo di Giovanni, a former pupil of Donatello and a master of bronze sculpture, Michelangelo immersed himself in the study of classical antiquity. Imagine the quiet contemplation as he touched the cold, smooth surfaces of ancient statues, tracing their forms, understanding the flow of their drapery, and absorbing the anatomical perfection forged by masters long dead. He wasn't just copying, he was communing with the past, his hands and mind intuitively grasping the principles of form and volume that had eluded others. Lorenzo de' Medici, recognizing an extraordinary talent in the young, intense boy, took Michelangelo directly under his wing. He invited him to live in the Medici palace, exposing him to a world of philosophers, poets, and scholars. This patronage was invaluable, providing not just financial support, but intellectual stimulation that few young artists of his time could ever dream of. Imagine the discussions, the debates, the constant exposure to new ideas and classical learning that shaped his mind as much as his hands. He dissected cadavers, pushing the boundaries of anatomical knowledge, understanding the intricate workings of muscles and bones in a way that would give his figures an unparalleled lifelike quality. He learned to feel the stone, to intuit the form hidden within the raw block, to see the figure waiting to be released. In the quiet hours of these formative years, as the sounds of Renaissance Florence drifted into the palace windows, perhaps the distant chatter of merchants, the clatter of horse hooves, or the faint strains of lute, Michelangelo was undergoing a profound transformation. The boy who had resisted scholarly pursuits was now absorbing knowledge with an insatiable hunger, not from books alone, but directly from a very fabric of classical art and the vibrant intellectual life around him. His hands, once forbidden from touching the clay and stone, were now expertly shaping it, discovering their destined purpose. A sense of destiny, still veiled in the promise of youth, began to unfold. It was here, amidst the timeless beauty of classical sculpture and under the generous gaze of the most powerful patron in Florence, that the boy who dreamed in stone truly began to carve out his own magnificent future, a future that would reshape the very definition of art itself. As the intellectual and artistic haven under Lorenzo de' Medici began to wane with his untimely death in 1492, Florence became a city of growing uncertainty. The political landscape shifted dramatically, and the once stable patronage that had nurtured young Michelangelo's burgeoning talent dissolved. For an ambitious young artist, barely into his 20s, staying in a city gripped by political and religious upheaval, soon to fall under the austere influence of Girolamo Savonarola, was no longer a viable path forward. The lure of new opportunities, the promise of grander commissions, and the intellectual vibrancy of another ancient city began to call to him. It was a call that would lead him away from a familiar Arno and towards eternal Tiber, toward the heart of the Christian world, Rome. Imagine Michelangelo, still relatively unknown outside Florentine artistic circles, arriving in this sprawling, magnificent city. Rome in the late 15th century was a place of immense contrasts. Crumbling ancient ruins stood side by side with grand new papal constructions, echoing both its glorious past and its renewed ambition as the center of Christendom. The air was heavy with history, the streets bustling with pilgrims, cardinals, and scholars. For a young sculptor accustomed to the refined patronage of the Medici, Rome presented a new kind of challenge. Here, the competition was fierce, the patrons powerful and demanding, and the sheer scale of potential projects daunting. He arrived seeking commissions, seeking the marble that whispered to him of hidden forms, but also seeking recognition in a city that truly understood the grandeur of ancient artistry. His initial years in Rome were marked by a mixture of small, less significant commissions and a relentless drive to prove his worth. He was still a young man, undeniably brilliant, but lacking the established reputation that would open the doors to the most prestigious projects. One early commission that hinted at his burgeoning skill was a marble Bacchus, a classical subject celebrating the god of wine. While perhaps not widely known today, this piece allowed him to explore the sensuousness of the human form, the delicate balance of movement and emotion, hinting at the depths of understanding that would soon explode onto the world stage. It was a practice ground, a proving stage for the monumental works yet to come. He absorbed the lessons of Roman antiquity, studying the unearthed fragments of classical sculpture that were being discovered across the city, comparing them to classical works he had encountered in the Medici garden. Then, in 1498, a fateful opportunity arose. It came from a French cardinal, Jean de Bilhers-le-Graules, who sought to commission a sculpture for his funerary chapel in Old St. Peter's Basilica. The subject was to be a Pietà, a scene depicting the Virgin Mary cradling the dead body of Jesus after his crucifixion. It was a common subject in Northern European art, but less so in Italy, and the cardinal was precise in his request. He wanted a work of such beauty and quality that no master of the age could surpass it. It was a daring challenge, a test of skill that few young artists would have dared to accept with such unwavering confidence. Michelangelo, then only 23 years old, took on the commission. He carefully selected a single block of magnificent Carrara marble, a pristine, almost luminous white stone, known for its purity and fine grain. Imagine the moment of selection. Standing before a colossal unworked block, its rough exterior concealing the masterpiece he already envisioned within. He once famously said, "Every block of stone has a statue inside it, and it is the task of the sculptor to discover it." For the Pietà, this philosophy was more than just words. It was the very essence of his approach. The work on the Pietà was painstaking, a testament to his unparalleled dedication and physical endurance. The process of sculpting marble is slow, deliberate, and incredibly demanding. Picture Michelangelo, day after day, in his workshop, surrounded by the growing pile of marble dust, the air thick with its fine particles. Listen carefully, and you might almost hear the rhythmic, almost meditative sound of the chisel against the stone, the sharp tap-tap-tap of the point chisel, removing large chunks, followed by the softer scrape of the toothed chisel, refining the contours, and finally, the gentle whisper of rasps and files, smoothing the surface to a silken finish. He didn't just carve. He listened to the stone, coaxing the forms within, respecting its inherent qualities. Michelangelo often worked alone or with minimal assistance, pouring his entire being into the creation. He would use a variety of tools: pointed chisels, toothed chisels, flat chisels, mallets, rasps, drills, and polishing cloths. Each tool served a specific purpose in transforming the raw, unyielding rock into flesh, drapery, and emotion. Imagine his hands, strong and calloused, yet incredibly sensitive, guiding the tools with an almost surgical precision. He understood the grain of the marble, how it would fracture, how it would yield. He moved around the block constantly, viewing it from every angle, ensuring that the sculpture would be perfect from any perspective, anticipating where light and shadow would play across the forms. The dust, omnipresent, would settle on his hair, his clothes, coating him in the very material he was transforming. It was a laborious, intimate dance between man and stone, a conversation that unfolded over many months. When the Pieta was unveiled in 1499, it was met with immediate, overwhelming astonishment. It was unlike anything seen before. What struck viewers most profoundly was its emotional impact and astonishing realism, combined with a sense of divine grace. The depiction of Mary cradling her dead son had traditionally emphasized her age and sorrow, but Michelangelo rendered her remarkably youthful, almost serene, a choice that initially puzzled some. His explanation, however, was profound. Mary's youth symbolized her purity and eternal virginity, untouched by sin and therefore by the ravages of earthly suffering, even as she bore the greatest grief. Christ, too, was depicted with a serene, almost peaceful expression in death, a testament to his divine nature and the willing sacrifice he made. But it was a technical mastery that truly captivated. The anatomical precision of Christ's body, the delicate veins subtly hinted at beneath the skin, the incredible sense of weight and lifelessness, contrasted with the living yet sorrowful posture of Mary, and perhaps most astonishingly, the drapery. The folds of Mary's robes are rendered with such lifelike fluidity, such a sense of weight and movement, that they seem to flow and gather as if made of real cloth, not cold, hard marble. Imagine the intricate carving required to achieve such delicate pleats, such deep shadows, and such realistic textures. It was a level of detail and realism that elevated the work beyond mere craftsmanship into the realm of profound art. The marble had ceased to be stone. It had become fabric, skin, hair, and raw emotion. Yet, amidst the initial waves of awe, a flicker of doubt emerged among some observers. How could such a young, relatively unknown artist have created something so extraordinarily magnificent? Whispers circulated that it must have been the work of a more established master. This slight questioning of his authorship, a subtle affront to his burgeoning pride and genius, led to one of the most iconic and rare moments in Michelangelo's career. In a decisive, almost defiant act of self-assertion, he carved his name into the sash running across Mary's chest. Michelangelo's Buonarroti Florentine Facebat, Michelangelo Buonarroti Florentine, made this. It was the only work he ever signed. This bold inscription was not merely a signature. It was a powerful declaration of individual authorship, a proud assertion of his identity and his unparalleled skill. It marked a turning point, not just for Michelangelo, but for the very concept of the artist's role in society, hinting at the shift from anonymous artisan to celebrated genius. With the unveiling and immediate acclaim of the Pieta, Michelangelo's reputation exploded. He was no longer just a promising young talent. He was a master in his own right, a formidable sculptor whose work spoke with a powerful, singular voice. The quiet intensity of his early years, the relentless practice in the Medici garden, the stubborn determination against his father's wishes, all had culminated in this moment of undeniable triumph. The Pieta was more than a sculpture. It was a prophecy of the artistic revolution he would lead. The raw fire of his genius, honed by discipline and infused with profound emotion, had now fully ignited, casting its brilliant light across the eternal city of Rome and signaling the dawn of masterpieces that would forever redefine the boundaries of human artistic achievement. The quiet young man who dreamed in stone had now, with this singular, sublime creation, etched his name indelibly into the annals of art history. As the echoes of the Pietist triumph still resonated to the hallowed halls of Rome, a new call began to beckon Michelangelo, drawing him back to the familiar, yet ever-changing landscape of his native city. Florence, though still a beacon of art and culture, was a city in political flux. The powerful Medici family had been expelled, and the Florentine Republic was now struggling to assert its independence and identity amidst the shifting alliances and turbulent politics of Renaissance Italy. It was a time of both uncertainty and fervent civic pride, a city yearning for symbols that would embody its newfound liberties and its enduring strength. And it was into this crucible of civic spirit and artistic ambition that Michelangelo, now a recognized master, would return in 1501. He arrived back in Florence with a burgeoning reputation, a young man who had conquered marble in Rome and proven his genius beyond a shadow of a doubt. Yet, even for an artist of his caliber, the next challenge that awaited him was monumental, literally and figuratively. It involved a colossal block of Carrara marble, a true giant of a stone that had lain abandoned and neglected for decades in cathedral workshops. This particular block had a storied, somewhat cursed, history. Quarried some 40 years prior, it had been intended for a statue of David for Florence Cathedral. However, 2 previous sculptors had attempted to work on it, only to abandon it due to its immense size, its awkward dimensions, and, crucially, a significant flaw, a large, unyielding inclusion of iron in its core, which made it notoriously difficult to work with and seemed to limit the possibilities of what could be carved from it. It was considered spoiled, ruined, an unusable piece of material that merely occupied valuable space. Imagine the scene: a colossal slab of marble, over 17 feet tall, standing like a forgotten sentinel, scarred by the half-hearted attempt of previous artists, deemed intractable by experts. Most sculptors would have dismissed it as an impossible task, a fool's errand that could ruin a reputation. But Michelangelo was no ordinary sculptor. He was audacious, brimming with the confidence of his recent successes, and possessed an unparalleled understanding of stone. When the Opry, the board of works of Florence Cathedral, and the powerful guild of wool merchants approached him, he didn't hesitate. He looked at the giant and saw not its flaws, but the magnificent figure waiting within, a figure that only he had the vision and the skill to release. This was a defining challenge he craved, a chance to truly prove his mastery over material, to transform what others saw as waste into a symbol of unparalleled beauty and strength. His acceptance of this seemingly impossible task was a testament to his ambition and his profound belief in his own abilities. The meticulous planning for David was as critical as the carving itself. Michelangelo spent weeks, if not months, in preparation, an essential phase often overlooked in the dramatic narrative of the creation. He made numerous drawings, sketches, and small wax and clay models of the figure. Unlike some of his contemporaries who relied heavily on scaling up smaller models, Michelangelo had an uncanny ability to visualize the finished sculpture within the raw block. He carefully studied the giant block, walking around it, analyzing its dimensions, its inherent weaknesses, and the precise location flaws. This intimate understanding of the marble was crucial. He had to conceive a pose for David that would not only fit within the limited depth of the block, due to the earlier attempt to carve it, but also cleverly incorporate or avoid the problematic iron vein. His genius lay not just in his carving skill, but in his spatial reasoning, his ability to see the perfect form trapped within imperfect stone. Then began a laborious process of carving the David. It would consume Michelangelo for over 2 years, from September 1501 to May 1504. Imagine the sheer scale of the undertaking. Unlike the Pieta, which was worked on in a workshop, the David was carved almost entirely in situ, within a makeshift wooden enclosure built around a colossal block in the cathedral courtyard. This provided some privacy and protection from the elements, but also meant he was working outdoors for much of the time. The work was physically grueling. Michelangelo, then in his mid-20s, possessed immense physical stamina. He would work for long hours, often alone or with only one or two assistants, tirelessly chipping away at the marble. Listen carefully to the sounds of his solitary endeavor. The relentless, rhythmic clang of his heavy mallet striking the steel chisel, followed by the crisp crack as fragments of marble broke away. He would use heavy, pointed chisels to rough out the massive form, removing tons of stone. Then, he would switch to toothed chisels for refining the surfaces, creating the initial contours of muscle and limb. Finally, the delicate work began with flat chisels, rasps, and various abrasives to achieve the smooth, lustrous surface for which his work is renowned. The amount of dust created must have been immense, a fine white powder coating everything and everyone. Imagine Michelangelo, covered from head to toe in marble dust, his hair and clothes powdered white, his eyes likely burning from the particles and the strain of constant focus. He worked from the top down, a method that allowed him to control the fall of marble chips and prevent damage to already carved sections. He climbed ladders and scaffolding, often in precarious positions, swinging his mallet with powerful, precise strokes, his entire being focused on the transformation of the inert stone into a living form. It was a testament to his perseverance, his boundless energy, and his singular devotion to the task. When the David was finally revealed in its nearly completed form, it was met with a mixture of awe and immediate recognition of his unprecedented mastery. It was not merely a strong man, but a profoundly psychological portrait of a young hero on the brink of destiny. Michelangelo chose to depict David before his famous encounter with Goliath, at the moment of intense contemplation, poised for action. His brows furrowed in concentration, his eyes fixed on a distant threat Goliath, a subtle tension in his neck and veins. His left hand holds a sling casually, while his right clenches a stone, ready. He is not a triumphant victor, but a vulnerable youth gathering his inner strength, relying on cunning and faith rather than brute force. The David is a marvel of anatomical perfection. Michelangelo's deep understanding of human anatomy, gleaned from his early dissections and countless hours of drawing, allowed him to render every muscle, every bone, every sinew with breathtaking accuracy. The subtle swelling of veins, the tension in the tendons, the precise articulation of the rib cage, all contribute to the overwhelming sense of lifelike presence. Yet, it is not merely realism. It is an idealized human form, embodying the Renaissance ideal of man as the measure of all things. The sheer scale, over 17 feet tall, further amplifies its impact, making David a towering, almost superhuman, yet utterly human figure. Once completed, the next challenge was a colossal logistical feat of moving the statue from the cathedral workshop to its intended location. The original plan was for it to be placed high on a buttress of the Florence Cathedral, but its immense weight, estimated at over 6 tons, and a desire for it to be seen up close led to a change of plans. A special wooden carriage was constructed, operated by levers and winches, and it took 40 men 4 days and nights to slowly, painstakingly roll the massive statue through the narrow, crowded streets of Florence to its new home in the Piazza della Signoria, the heart of Florentine civic life. Imagine the spectacle. Thousands of citizens gathering, craning their necks to witness the slow, deliberate journey of their new colossal hero, a mixture of awe and pride swelling in the air. This relocation itself was an engineering marvel of its time, demonstrating the Florentines' determination to showcase their masterpiece. The David was immediately recognized as an unparalleled masterpiece and quickly became a powerful symbol of Florentine liberty and independence. Just as a young David, armed only with faith and courage, had triumphed over the tyrannical giant Goliath, so too did the Florentine Republic, a relatively small state, aspire to stand defiant against larger, more powerful adversaries like the Medici, who longed to return, and other rival states. The statue, therefore, was more than just a beautiful sculpture. It was a potent political statement, a declaration of civic pride, and an embodiment of the Republican ideals of strength, courage, and justice. With the unveiling and public adoration of the David, Michelangelo's recognition soared to unprecedented heights. He was no longer just a talented sculptor. He was considered a living legend, a divino, a divine artist whose works seemed to transcend mortal ability. The fame that had begun with the Pieta now solidified into an enduring legacy. This growing weight of fame, however, came with its own burdens. relentless demand from powerful patrons, political intrigues, and the constant pressure to surpass his own previous achievements. Yet, even as his fame grew, his solitary nature and relentless dedication to his craft remained. The boy who dreamed in stone had awakened a giant, not just in marble, but in the very history of art, forever altering the landscape of human creativity. As you drift asleep, perhaps you can visualize this colossal figure, standing watchful over Florence, a testament to the power of a single artist's unwavering vision. As the whispers of the David triumph in Florence began to fade into the quiet hum of history, Michelangelo, now a celebrated master, found himself drawn back to the grandeur and the relentless demands of the eternal city. Rome, the seat of papal power, was a magnet for genius, and its most formidable patron, Pope Julius II, was a man of immense ambition, often referred to as the warrior pope for his military campaigns and his fierce determination to restore the glory of the papacy. It was Julius who would present Michelangelo with the ultimate artistic challenge, one that would push his physical and artistic limits beyond anything he had ever imagined: the Sistine Chapel ceiling. Imagine Michelangelo's initial reaction. He considered himself, first and foremost, a sculptor. His hands yearned for the cool, yielding resistance of marble, not the fluid, unforgiving nature of paint on wet plaster. His original, cherished commission from Julius II was for a colossal tomb, a monumental sculptural project designed to be the grandest sepulchre ever conceived, a work that truly resonated with his sculptural soul. But Julius, with his characteristic stubbornness and a sudden change of heart, insisted on the ceiling. He saw in Michelangelo not just a sculptor, but a universal genius capable of anything. Michelangelo resisted vehemently, arguing that painting was not his true calling, that he lacked the experience for such a massive fresco undertaking. But a pope's command was not to be gainsaid, especially not by a man as unyielding as Julius II. It was, in essence, a forced commission, a divine imposition that would paradoxically lead to one of humanity's greatest artistic achievements. The sheer scale of the task was daunting. The Sistine Chapel ceiling spans over 5,000 square feet, a vast, curved expanse rising more than 60 feet above the chapel floor. Imagine standing beneath it, craning your neck, trying to comprehend the sheer magnitude of the surface that needed to be painted. The technique required was fresco, a demanding art form where pigments mixed with water are applied directly onto wet plaster. As the plaster dries, the paint becomes an integral part of the wall itself, making the work incredibly durable but also requiring immense speed and precision. There was no room for error. Once the plaster dried, corrections were nearly impossible without chipping away the section and starting anew. Michelangelo, ever the innovator, designed his own unique scaffolding system, a flat platform suspended on brackets from holes in the walls, rather than resting on the floor. This allowed the chapel to remain in use below, but it meant he was constantly working overhead, often lying on his back or standing with his head tilted sharply upwards for hours on end. Imagine the immense physical discomfort, the constant strain on his neck and back, the paint dripping into his eyes, blurring his vision, the cramped, awkward positions he had to maintain. He famously complained in letters and poems about the agony, describing himself as having a goiter from a contorted posture and his beard pointing to the sky. He often worked in near solitude, with only a few assistants to help prepare plaster and mix colors, but the actual painting was almost entirely his own hand. The isolation, the physical pain, and the immense pressure to create a masterpiece for the spiritual heart of Christendom must have been immense. For 4 relentless years, from 1508 to 1512, Michelangelo toiled on the celestial canvas. He conceived a sweeping, monumental narrative that depicted the history of the world from creation to flood, a grand theological and philosophical statement. The ceiling is divided into 9 central panels, flanked by prophets and sibyls, and surrounded by ancestors of Christ and ignudi nude male figures. Each scene is a masterpiece in itself, teeming with life, emotion, and profound symbolism. Imagine the vibrant colors, the dynamic compositions, the powerful figures that seem to leap from the curved surface, defying the architectural constraints. Among these countless figures, one panel stands out as an icon of human creativity: the creation of Adam. Picture the scene in your mind's eye. God, an elderly, bearded figure, propelled by a swirl of angels, reaches out with an outstretched hand, his finger almost touching that of a languid yet awakening Adam. The space between their fingertips, that tiny gap, is charged with an almost palpable energy, representing the very spark of life, the divine breath being transferred from creator to creation. Adam lies on the earth, still heavy with the dust from which he was formed, but his eyes are opening, his body stirring, responding to the divine touch. It is a moment of profound beauty, a testament to the humanistic ideals of the Renaissance, celebrating both divine power and human potential. The creation of Adam is not just a painting. It is a visual poem about the genesis of life, the connection between the earthly and the divine, and the inherent dignity of humanity. When the Sistine Chapel ceiling was finally unveiled, the impact was immediate and overwhelming. It was hailed as an unprecedented triumph, a work of such scale, complexity, and artistic brilliance that it instantly cemented Michelangelo's reputation as one of the greatest artists of all time. Not just a sculptor, but a painter of unparalleled genius. The sheer audacity of his vision, the anatomical perfection of his figures, and emotional depth of his narrative left viewers breathless. Decades later, an older, more somber Michelangelo will return to the Sistine Chapel, summoned by Pope Paul III. This time, the commission was for the altar wall, a massive fresco depicting the Last Judgment. The world had changed significantly since the ceiling was painted. The sack of Rome in 1527 had left the city devastated, and the Protestant Reformation had plunged Europe into religious turmoil. The Counter-Reformation was gaining momentum, bringing with it a more severe, less idealized view of humanity and its relationship with God. Michelangelo, now in his 60s, poured his personal anxieties and the spirit of his turbulent times into this new masterpiece. Imagine the contrast. While the ceiling celebrated creation and hope, the Last Judgment, completed in 1541, is a powerful, almost terrifying vision of divine retribution and human reckoning. Christ is depicted as a powerful, muscular judge, his arm raised in a gesture of condemnation, surrounded by saints, the resurrected and the damned. The figures are more turbulent, tormented, and less idealized than those on the ceiling. There's a raw, visceral energy to the scene, a sense of humanity grappling with its ultimate fate. The fresco was controversial from the moment it was unveiled, particularly for its extensive nudity, which some deemed inappropriate for such a sacred space. Critics, including Cardinal Caraffa, demanded that the figures be covered, leading to the infamous Bragantone, breeches painter, who was later hired to paint draperies over some of the nude forms after Michelangelo's death. Despite the controversy, The Last Judgment remains a monumental work, reflecting Michelangelo's deepening piety, his profound understanding of the human condition, and his willingness to push artistic boundaries, even at the cost of public criticism. It is a powerful, almost overwhelming visual sermon on sin, redemption, and divine justice. As Michelangelo entered his final decades, his primary focus shifted, somewhat reluctantly, to architecture, particularly the monumental task of completing St. Peter's Basilica. He was appointed chief architect of the Basilica in 1546 at the astonishing age of 72. The project had been ongoing for decades, with various architects like Bramante, Raphael, and Sangallo having contributed designs, often leading to a fragmented and inconsistent vision. Michelangelo, with his characteristic determination, swept aside previous plans and imposed his own grander, more unified vision. His most enduring architectural legacy is the magnificent dome of St. Peter's Basilica. Imagine him, an old man, climbing the scaffolding, overseeing construction, his mind still sharp, his vision unwavering. He drew inspiration from Brunelleschi's dome on the Florence Cathedral, but imbued it with distinctly Roman grandeur and power. His design for the dome was simpler, bolder, and more structurally sound than previous proposals. He worked on the basilica until his death, refusing payment for his services, stating that he worked for the love of God. Though the dome was not fully completed until after his passing, it was built largely to his design, a soaring testament to his genius, a crowning glory that defines the Roman skyline to this day. It is a symbol of spiritual aspiration, a monumental achievement in engineering and aesthetics, and a fitting capstone to a life dedicated to shaping the world. Michelangelo's work ethic was legendary and relentless, continuing unabated into his late 80s. He was known for his austere lifestyle, often living like a pauper despite accumulating considerable wealth from his commissions. He was a solitary figure, often described as melancholic, intense, and difficult, with few close friends. His relationships were often strained, marked by his fierce independence and uncompromising artistic vision. Yet, beneath this demanding exterior lay a profound piety that deepened with age. He saw his art not merely as a profession, but as a form of worship, a spiritual endeavor to bring glory to God. His numerous poems, often overlooked, reveal a deeply introspective and spiritual man, grappling with faith, sin, and the pursuit of divine beauty. Even when his hands were frail, he continued to draw, to sketch, to refine his ideas, his mind still teeming with creative energy. Michelangelo died in Rome in 1564, just shy of his 89th birthday, leaving behind a legacy that is almost unfathomable in its scope and impact. He was more than just a sculptor, painter, or architect. He was a universal man of the Renaissance, a true polymath whose genius transcended the boundaries of individual disciplines. He revolutionized sculpture with the emotional depth of the Pietà and the psychological power of the David. He redefined painting with the monumental narrative and dynamic figures of the Sistine Chapel ceiling and the dramatic intensity of the Last Judgment. And he left an indelible mark on architecture with the majestic dome of St. Peter's. His influence on art history is immense and enduring. He pushed the boundaries of human representation, imbuing his figures with an unprecedented sense of life, emotion, and anatomical perfection. He inspired generations of artists, shaping the course of Western art for centuries to come. His forms, his colors, his very spirit continue to whisper through the ages, inviting us to contemplate the profound power of human creativity and the enduring quest for beauty, truth, and the divine. As you now drift deeper into the quiet embrace of sleep, let the grand scale of Michelangelo's achievements settle gently in your mind. From a determined boy who dreamed in stone, to the titan who carved and painted and built for popes and for God, his journey was one of relentless dedication, profound vision, and unparalleled genius. May the echoes of his chisels and brushes, the silent majesty of his marble forms, and the celestial grandeur of his painted narratives guide your own dreams to take flight, carrying you into a peaceful, restorative slumber. As the day surrenders to the soft embrace of night, let your mind drift gently, effortlessly, back in time. Journey with me to a period of exhilarating discovery and vibrant creativity, to the heart of the Italian Renaissance. Picture the rolling, sun-drenched hills of Tuscany, dotted with olive groves and sleepy villages, leading to a city that sparkled with intellect and artistic fervor, Florence. But our story begins a little way off in a small, picturesque town called Vinci, nestled amidst those very hills. It was here, in April of 1452, that Leonardo di Ser Piero da Vinci entered the world. His birth was, in some ways, unconventional. Leonardo was born out of wedlock, the son of a respected notary, Ser Piero, and a peasant woman named Caterina. This illegitimacy meant he would not follow in his father's footsteps into the legal profession, a path usually reserved for legitimate sons. Instead, it offered him a different kind of freedom, one that allowed his extraordinary mind to roam unfettered by traditional expectations. Imagine him as a boy, growing up in the serene countryside, far from the rigid academic structures of city schools. His formal education was modest, lacking the classical Latin and advanced mathematics that would have been standard for a legitimate son of his social standing. Yet, this very lack of formal schooling proved to be a peculiar blessing. It meant his intellect was shaped not by rote learning from ancient texts, but by direct, unfiltered observation of the world around him. Picture young Leonardo, exploring the fields and streams of Vinci. He wasn't just a child playing. He was a nascent scientist, a meticulous observer. He'd spend hours watching the flight of birds, fascinated by the mechanics of their wings and the currents of the air. He'd sketch the intricate patterns of water as it flowed over stones, observing whirlpools and eddies with an almost meditative focus. He'd collect strange rocks and fossils, pondering their origins and the vast stretches of time they represented. He dissected dead animals to understand their musculature and bone structure, driven by an insatiable hunger to know how things worked. This innate curiosity about nature was the bedrock of his genius, a boundless thirst for understanding that would define his entire life's work. His notebooks, even in these early years, would have begun to fill with quick sketches, tiny annotations, recording every minute detail that caught his remarkable eye. The true turning point in young Leonardo's life came when he was around 14 years old. His father, recognizing the boy's exceptional artistic talent, perhaps noticing the countless drawings that filled his pages, or the way he captured the likeness of local villagers with uncanny accuracy, brought him to Florence. Here, he was apprenticed to Andrea del Verrocchio, one of the leading artists of the day. Verrocchio's workshop was far more than just a painting studio. It was a vibrant, multidisciplinary hub, a true melting pot of Renaissance arts and crafts. Imagine stepping into this bustling space, the scent of molten bronze mingling with the aroma of freshly ground pigments, the rhythmic clang of a hammer shaping metal, the quiet scratching of a pen on parchment, the murmur of apprentices learning their craft. In Verrocchio's versatile workshop, Leonardo received an unparalleled education. He wasn't just learning to paint. He was exposed to a vast array of disciplines. He learned sculpture, working with clay and bronze, understanding form in 3 dimensions. He delved into goldsmithing, mastering the intricate details of metalwork. He absorbed the principles of perspective, learning how to create the illusion of depth on a flat surface. He studied the chemistry of pigments, understanding how to grind minerals, mix binders, and create vibrant, lasting colors. He learned about light and shadow chiaroscuro, how they define form and create atmosphere. And critically, he gained practical knowledge of engineering and mechanics, as Verrocchio's workshop often undertook commissions for large-scale projects, including casting monumental bronze statues and designing intricate machinery. This was an immersive, hands-on education that bypassed rigid theory in favor of practical application and direct observation. His innate curiosity found fertile ground here. Under Verrocchio's tutelage, Leonardo honed his powers of observation to an almost superhuman degree. He sketched constantly, from models, from nature, from memory. He studied anatomy not just for artistic representation, but for deep understanding, dissecting human cadavers, a practice often frowned upon, to meticulously map muscles, tendons, and bones. Imagine him, with a flickering candle and a sharp scalpel, revealing the hidden structures beneath the skin, driven by an insatiable desire to understand the very mechanics of life itself. These anatomical studies, meticulously drawn and annotated, will become some of his most groundbreaking scientific contributions, though largely unseen in his lifetime. A famous anecdote from this period beautifully illustrates Leonardo's burgeoning genius and his master's recognition of it. Verrocchio was commissioned to paint the baptism of Christ, and he entrusted his young apprentice with painting one of the angels in the lower left corner. Legend has it that when Verrocchio saw Leonardo's angel, rendered with such exquisite grace, a softness of form, and a nascent understanding of sfumato, the blurring of lines and tones to create a hazy, dreamlike effect that surpassed his own work, he was so humbled and impressed that he never painted with a brush again, whether literal or apocryphal. This story underscores the profound impact Leonardo's talent had even in his formative years, a quiet assertion of a new artistic voice emerging from the shadows of his master. As his apprenticeship matured, Leonardo's curious mind began to extend its reach far beyond the conventional boundaries of art. While painting and sculpture were his primary disciplines, his intellect refused to be confined. He delved deeply into botany, filling pages with meticulous drawings of plants, understanding their growth patterns, their structures, and their life cycles. He studied geology, examining rock formations, understanding the forces that shape mountains and valleys, even theorizing about the vast age of the Earth. His fascination with the flight of birds evolved into detailed studies of aerodynamics, sketching designs for flying machines that were centuries ahead of their time. He pondered the nature of light, the properties of water, the mechanics of the human body, the engineering challenges of building great structures. His notebooks, which would eventually comprise thousands of pages, became a private universe of discovery. They were filled not just with artistic sketches for paintings, but with intricate diagrams of mechanical devices, detailed anatomical drawings, geological observations, botanical studies, and philosophical reflections. This relentless pursuit of knowledge, this desire to understand every facet of the natural world, was truly unique. For Leonardo, there was no clear distinction between art and science. Art was a means of deep observation, a way to understand the world's intricate workings. Science was a pathway to truth, a fundamental exploration that informed and enriched his artistic expression. He didn't just paint what he saw. He painted what he understood, filtered through years of meticulous observation and intellectual inquiry. This early period in Florence, therefore, was not merely about learning artistic techniques. It was about the awakening of a truly polymathic mind. Leonardo da Vinci was not just an artist. He was, even in his youth, a budding scientist, an engineer, an anatomist, a botanist, and an inventor. His insatiable curiosity, his uncanny ability to observe, and his relentless pursuit of knowledge in every direction laid the groundwork for a life dedicated to understanding the universe. One stroke of pen, one meticulous drawing, one profound insight at a time. The energetic, inquisitive boy from Vinci was slowly, deliberately, transforming into the universal genius whose light would shine through the ages. As you settle into your peaceful slumber, imagine the vibrant atmosphere of that Renaissance workshop, the soft glow of lamps on parchment, and the quiet determination of a young man whose dreams extended far beyond the canvas, reaching into the very fabric of existence. As the vibrant hum of Florence faded into the distance, a new city, with its own unique pulse, began to beckon Leonardo. The early 1480s marked a pivotal shift in his career, as he sought new opportunities beyond the familiar Florentine workshops. His gaze turned northward, towards Milan, a city ruled by the ambitious and powerful Duke Ludovico Sforza, known as Il Moro, the Moor. Unlike the merchant Republic of Florence, Milan was a ducal court, a center of military power, engineering innovation, and grand spectacle. This was a place that offered a different kind of challenge, a different canvas for a mind as expansive as Leonardo's. Imagine Leonardo, now in his early 30s, crafting a remarkable letter to Ludovico Sforza. This wasn't merely a polite request for employment. It was a bold, almost audacious, declaration of his unparalleled abilities. He listed 10 distinct talents, carefully showcasing his skills in areas that he knew would appeal to a military leader. Only at the very end did he humbly mention his artistic capabilities. He detailed his expertise in military engineering, designing lightweight, strong bridges for rapid troop deployment, creating impregnable fortresses, devising new kinds of cannons and siege engines, and even crafting innovative protective vehicles, what we might recognize as early concept for tanks. He spoke of his mastery in civil engineering, plans for constructing canals, diverting rivers, and designing public buildings. He highlighted his ability to create grand sculptures, specifically mentioning a colossal equestrian monument for the Duke's father, Francesco Sforza. And almost as an afterthought, he noted a proficiency in painting and sculpture, claiming he could execute works equal to anyone else's. This letter wasn't just a resume. It was a testament to a mind that saw connections where others saw only separate disciplines, a mind that understood the practical applications of his boundless curiosity. Ludovico Sforza, impressed by this extraordinary list of talents, invited Leonardo to his court in Milan. And so began a 17-year period, from approximately 1482 to 1499, that would prove to be one of the most intellectually fertile and diverse of Leonardo's life. Imagine him within the bustling, opulent Sforza court. His life here was multifaceted, far beyond that of a mere painter. He was the Duke's trusted advisor on matters of engineering, designing complex irrigation systems for the ducal lands and advising on military defenses. He was a master of spectacle, a visionary organizer of elaborate court festivals, pageants, and theatrical performances. Picture the fantastic contraptions he might have designed for these events. Mechanical lions that walked and presented flowers, elaborate stage sets that transformed magically, or intricate costumes that astonished the courtiers. He was a scenographer, a designer of ephemeral worlds that captured the imagination. He was also a talented musician, inventing new instruments and playing the lyre with such skill that he often charmed his way into favor. Yet, even amidst these diverse duties, his profound artistic genius continued to flourish. It was during his Milanese period that he painted some of his most iconic works, including 2 versions of the Virgin of the Rocks and, most famously, the Last Supper. This monumental fresco, painted on the refectory wall of the Santa Maria del Grazie Monastery, was a daring departure from traditional techniques. Instead of true fresco, painting on wet plaster, Leonardo experimented with a drier method, hoping to achieve a greater luminosity and allow for slower, more meticulous work, much like oil painting. Imagine the quiet intensity as he worked, day after day, not only on the paint itself, but on the deeper meaning of the scene. The Last Supper is not merely a depiction of a biblical event. It is a profound study in human psychology and emotion. Leonardo chose a dramatic moment when Jesus announces, "One of you will betray me." Imagine the wave of shock, confusion, and despair that ripples through the apostles. Each figure is depicted with a unique, instantaneous reaction. Hands flying up in protest, faces contorted in disbelief, bodies recoiling in dismay. Judas, isolated by shadow and gesture, subtly recoils, his hand reaching for bread at the same time as Christ's. Leonardo meticulously captured the very essence of human feeling, revealing the inner turmoil of each apostle through their facial expressions, hand gestures, and body language. He transformed a static religious tableau into a dynamic, psychological drama, inviting the viewer to witness a pivotal human moment rather than just a sacred one. While his experimental technique unfortunately led to the fresco's rapid deterioration over centuries, its artistic and psychological power remains undiminished. It was during these Milanese years that Leonardo's unparalleled intellect truly exploded onto thousands of pages of notebooks. These weren't neatly organized treatises or published works. They were a sprawling, intimate record of his mind at work. Imagine stacks of these bound volumes, filled with an astonishing array of observations, scientific theories, philosophical musings, and most famously, intricate drawings of his inventions and studies. And here's a curious detail. He wrote most of these notes in mirror script, from right to left, requiring a mirror to read easily. This was likely a personal habit, perhaps to prevent smudging, as he was left-handed, or simply to guard his private thoughts. But it adds another layer of intrigue to his already enigmatic persona. Delve into the pages of these notebooks and prepare to be astonished by the sheer diversity of his genius. His mind leaped effortlessly from one discipline to another. You'd find detailed sketches of flying machines, ornithopters with flapping wings, designs for early helicopters, and even a remarkably accurate design for a parachute. Imagine him observing birds, then dissecting their wings, understanding the mechanics of flight, then translating that knowledge into designs for human flight, centuries before powered flight became a reality. Alongside these aerial ambitions, his notebooks reveal a deep fascination with military engineering. Beyond the descriptions in his letter, you find designs for armored vehicles, what we now call tanks, multi-barrel machine guns, giant crossbows, and innovative methods for fortifications. He approached warfare not just as an artist, but as a problem-solving engineer, seeking efficiency and devastation with chilling objectivity. His curiosity extended deep into the human body. His anatomical studies, often based on illicit dissections of human cadavers, a practice both dangerous and frowned upon, were groundbreaking. Imagine the meticulous detail. Layer by layer, he drew muscles, bones, tendons, organs, even the intricate workings of the heart and the developing fetus in the womb. His drawings were not just scientifically accurate. They were works of art, marrying scientific precision with aesthetic beauty. He sought to understand the mechanics of life, the hidden clockwork beneath the skin. Beyond human biology, his notebooks reveal profound insights into botany, with exquisite drawings of plants, their roots, stems, leaves, and flowers, demonstrating his understanding of their growth and structure. His studies in hydrology were equally impressive, with detailed diagrams of water currents, whirlpools, and the dynamics of fluid movement, all meticulously observed and analyzed. He designed canals, pumps, and other water management systems that were incredibly advanced for his time. This Milanese period was, unequivocally, one of intense intellectual production and diversification. Leonardo wasn't just a master painter. He was a master of observation, a tireless inquirer, an engineer of formidable skill, and an inventor whose ideas were often too complex or too far ahead of his time to be realized with the technology available to him. His notebooks became a vast, living testament to his insatiable hunger for knowledge, a testament to a mind that never stopped questioning, exploring, and creating, whether with a brush, a chisel, or simply a quill pen. As you close your eyes, picture the boundless expanse of thoughts, captured in those mirror-scripted pages, a universe of ideas waiting to be discovered, guiding your own dreams into a realm of limitless possibilities. As the 15th century drew to a close, the political landscape of Italy shifted once more, profoundly impacting Leonardo's life. The once stable Sforza court in Milan, under Ludovico il Moro, crumbled under the invasion of French forces. With his patron overthrown and the city in chaos, Leonardo, now nearing 50, chose to leave a city where he had cultivated so many facets of his polymathic genius. His journey led him back, almost inevitably, to the familiar streets of Florence, the vibrant heart of Renaissance, where his artistic journey had first begun. Imagine his return. Florence, still a republic, was a city of fierce artistic competition and intellectual ferment. It was here that he would embark on one of his most iconic and enduring creations, a painting that would captivate the world for centuries to come, the Mona Lisa. The circumstances of its commission are somewhat shrouded in the mists of history, adding to its allure. It is believed to have been a portrait of Lisa Gherardini del Giocondo, the wife of a wealthy Florentine merchant. But for Leonardo, it was far more than a simple likeness. It became a personal obsession, a canvas upon which he would pour his deepest understanding of human expression and the very essence of life. He worked on it for years, carrying it with him wherever he went, never quite considering it finished. Picture the slow, meticulous process of a creation. Unlike the bold, decisive strokes of traditional portrait, Leonardo built the Mona Lisa with layers upon subtle layers of translucent oil glazes. This was his mastery of sfumato, a technique he had pioneered and perfected. Imagine the delicate, almost imperceptible blending of colors and tones, creating soft transitions between light and shadow, blurring the contours of her face and the surrounding landscape. There are no harsh lines, no abrupt changes. Everything flows seamlessly, like a gentle dream. This technique gives a painting its characteristic ethereal quality, a soft, misty atmosphere that makes the figure seem alive, breathing, and ever so slightly out of reach. And then there is the smile. It is the central enigma, the very heart of the Mona Lisa's enduring fascination. Imagine gazing at it, watching as her lips seem to subtly shift, her expression altering with every glance. Is she smiling? Is she amused? Is she sad or simply contemplative? This ambiguity is no accident. It is a deliberate result of Leonardo's sfumato. By blurring the corners of her mouth and eyes, he left the precise nature of her expression undefined, allowing the viewer's own emotions and perceptions to fill in the gaps. This makes the Mona Lisa feel uniquely interactive, as if she is responding to your presence, your gaze, her secrets forever just beyond full comprehension. It's this psychological depth, this captured moment of internal thought and feeling, that elevates the Mona Lisa from a mere portrait to a profound study of the human soul. She is not just a likeness. She is a mirror reflecting the complexities of our own perception. The fascination with the Mona Lisa endures precisely because of this unique blend of artistic innovation, psychological insight, and tantalizing mystery. Her expression seems to change depending on how you look at her, or perhaps on how you feel. The landscape behind her, too, is dreamlike and fantastical, adding to the enigmatic quality, with its distant mountains and winding rivers that seem to have a life of their own. The painting embodies Leonardo's entire philosophy, a profound observation of inner life expressed through meticulous external detail, veiled in a softness that invites endless contemplation. It speaks to something deeply human about the unknowable nature of others, the secrets held behind a seemingly simple smile. Beyond his groundbreaking work in painting, Leonardo's return to Florence saw him deep in his relentless pursuit of scientific knowledge. For him, art and science were not separate disciplines. They were two inseparable facets of the same profound quest, the understanding of life and the universe. His artistic prowess was merely the most refined tool for recording his scientific observations. Imagine him back in his Florentine studio, surrounded not just by canvases and brushes, but by anatomical sketches, geological specimens, and intricate diagrams of water flow. His anatomical studies continued with fervent dedication. He performed further dissections, often secretly, driven by an unquenchable thirst to map the human body's intricate mechanics. Imagine him carefully peeling back layers of skin, muscle, and tissue, revealing the tendons, the vascular system, the nervous network. His drawings from this period are incredibly detailed, far surpassing the understanding of his contemporaries. He didn't just draw what he saw, he drew what he understood of function and movement. He meticulously illustrated mechanics of the hand, the intricacies of the eye, and the workings of the heart, perceiving them as complex biological machines. For Leonardo, understanding the inner workings of the human body was essential for accurately depicting its external form and conveying its true emotions in art. His mind also continuously turned to the natural world around him. His geological studies expanded as he examined rock strata, theorizing about the ancient history of the Earth and the formation of fossils. He contemplated the forces that shaped landscapes, the slow, relentless power of water and erosion. His notebooks are filled with observations of water in motion, intricate sketches of whirlpools, eddies, and the way currents interact. He studied the dynamics of fluids, recognizing universal patterns that applied to everything from a trickling stream to a turbulent river. Imagine his quiet intensity as he watched a leaf float down a river, not just seeing the leaf, but analyzing the complex fluid dynamics that propelled its journey. He was constantly observing, constantly questioning. How does light fall? How does an emotion manifest on the face? How does water flow? How do birds fly? Every observation became fodder for his drawings and notes, blurring the lines between artist, scientist, and philosopher. For Leonardo, the act of observation was a spiritual pursuit, a direct engagement with the wonders of divine creation. He believed that to truly paint a human being, one must understand not only their outward appearance, but also the internal machinery of their body and the complex workings of their mind and emotions. This holistic approach was revolutionary. This period in Florence also saw a fascinating, though often overstated, rivalry with Michelangelo, both titanic figures of the Renaissance. Their artistic temperaments and methods were profoundly different. While Michelangelo embraced the dramatic, the monumental, and the physically demanding nature of sculpture, Leonardo favored the subtle, the psychological, and the scientific inquiry that underpinned his painting. They were commissioned to paint two massive frescoes for the Great Council Hall in Florence, Leonardo's Battle of Anghiari and Michelangelo's Battle of Cassina. Imagine the anticipation in Florence, the city divided in its admiration for these two giants. While the rivalry makes for good drama, it's more productive to view it as a contrast of artistic methods and styles. Michelangelo, the sculptor, approached painting with focus on powerful, idealized human forms, almost as if he was carving them onto the wall. His figures were often robust, muscular, and charged with physical tension. Leonardo, the scientist painter, focused on capturing movement, atmosphere, and psychological depth. His figures were enveloped in sfumato, their emotions subtly conveyed through expression and gesture, reflecting his meticulous studies of light, shadow, and human psychology. Ultimately, neither fresco was fully completed, and only copies and preparatory sketches remain, but their intended juxtaposition speaks volumes about the diverse artistic approaches of the High Renaissance. Leonardo's experimental fresco technique for Battle of Anghiari, similar to his approach for The Last Supper, again proved unstable, leading to its eventual decay. This highlighted his continuous experimentation, even when it led to practical challenges. His enduring quest was for a science of painting, and conversely, an art of science. He believed painting was a superior art form precisely because it required deep scientific understanding. To him, the painter must be a master of optics, anatomy, geology, and perspective. The art was not just about technique. It was about embodying knowledge, and his scientific inquiries, presented with such exquisite drawing, became art in themselves. His notebooks are the ultimate testament to this fusion. Pages where a mechanical drawing of a flying machine is placed alongside a study of a human heart, adjacent to a philosophical musing on the nature of light. For Leonardo, the universe was a grand, interconnected system, and his life's work was dedicated to understanding and visually articulating those connections. As you drift now, let the subtle mysteries of the Mona Lisa smile and the intricate beauty of Leonardo's scientific drawings fill your mind. Imagine a world where every observation, no matter how small, sparked a profound inquiry, where art was the highest form of scientific understanding, and science was the most beautiful expression of truth. Leonardo da Vinci's time in Florence during this period was a testament to his boundless intellectual curiosity, a time when he wove together the threads of art and science into a seamless tapestry, leaving behind not just masterpieces, but a legacy of thought that continues to inspire us to look deeper, observe more closely, and seek the profound beauty in every facet of existence. As the vibrant life of Renaissance Italy, with its political upheavals and fervent artistic rivalries, slowly began to give way to the quieter twilight of his years, Leonardo da Vinci's journey led him to a new horizon. The allure of his genius had transcended the Alps, catching the attention of one of Europe's most enlightened and ambitious monarchs, King Francis I of France. Young, cultured, and immensely appreciative of art and knowledge, Francis I extended an irresistible invitation to the aging master. Imagine the journey, perhaps in the year 1516, as Leonardo, now in his mid-60s, traversed the formidable mountain passes, not as a desperate refugee, but as an honored guest. He brought with him his most cherished possessions, his beloved paintings, including the Mona Lisa and St. John the Baptist, and crucially, his voluminous notebooks, filled with the sprawling landscape of his mind. Francis I welcomed him with profound reverence, offering him the tranquil sanctuary of the Chateau du Clos-Luz, a charming manor house nestled close to the royal castle in Amboise, in the picturesque Loire Valley. Here, Leonardo was bestowed with the title Premier Painter, Engineer, and Architect of the King, a designation that perfectly encapsulated the breadth of his talents and the high esteem in which he was held. These final years in France, from 1516 until his death in 1519, were a period of peaceful reflection and intellectual synthesis, rather than intense artistic production. Imagine Leonardo, less burdened by the incessant demands of impatient patrons, now able to dedicate his time to what truly fascinated him. While he did little new painting, he spent countless hours organizing and refining his vast collection of notebooks. These were not just jottings, they were encyclopedias of his life's observations and theories, spanning art, anatomy, engineering, botany, geology, and more. He meticulously compiled, categorized, and sometimes even redrew diagrams, attempting to bring order to the boundless chaos of his accumulated knowledge. His role for King Francis I was primarily that of a consultant and a living source of wisdom. Imagine the king and Leonardo engaged in long, contemplative discussions, perhaps walking through the beautiful gardens of Clos-Luz. Francis I would have sought his counsel on everything from architecture and canal building to the design of court festivals and military fortifications. Leonardo, no longer burdened by the need to actively create large-scale works, found fulfillment in sharing his accumulated wisdom, offering insights that were centuries ahead of their time. He designed ambitious, though never realized, projects for Francis, such as a new royal residence at Romorantin with a massive river diversion project or intricate mechanical lines for court entertainment, showcasing his enduring ingenuity even in his declining health. It is in these final years, and particularly through the enduring legacy of his notebooks, that we truly grasp the profound idea that Leonardo's most important works were not always finished paintings or sculptures, but his ideas, his observations, and his relentless pursuit of knowledge itself. The Mona Lisa or The Last Supper are magnificent testaments to his artistic genius, but his thousands of pages of notes and drawings reveal the boundless, insatiable curiosity that fueled every stroke of his brush, every line of his pen. These notebooks are a window into a mind constantly questioning, constantly exploring, constantly seeking to understand the underlying principles of the natural world. They reveal that the finished masterpieces were merely the visible tip of an enormous iceberg of intellectual inquiry. The vast extent of his notebook stands as the ultimate testament to his unparalleled mind. Imagine them now, held in various collections around the world: the Codex Leicester, the Codex Atlanticus, the Windsor anatomical manuscripts, thousands upon thousands of pages, densely packed with minuscule mirror script writing, accompanied by exquisitely detailed drawings. You might find a page with study of a human heart, followed by a design for a flying machine, then observations on the erosion of rocks, and finally, a sketch for a painting. The seemingly chaotic arrangement reflects the interconnectedness of knowledge in Leonardo's mind. For him, The way a bird's wing worked was intimately connected to the flow of water, and the structure of a human muscle informed the pose of a painted figure. These notebooks are a profound legacy, revealing a universal intellect that embraced every field of human endeavor, demonstrating that true understanding comes from seeing the whole, not just the parts. Leonardo da Vinci passed away on May 2nd, 1519, in Amboise, just shy of his 67th birthday. Legend, beautifully depicted in art, often places King Francis I at his bedside, holding the dying master's head in a final, tender gesture of respect and admiration. While historical accuracy might debate the literal presence of the king at that precise moment, the essence of the legend rings true. Francis I genuinely adored Leonardo, viewing him not just as an artist, but as a sage, a mentor, and a truly unique human being whose brilliance illuminated his court. His death marked the quiet departure of a man who had fundamentally changed the way humanity would perceive art, science, and the very act of inquiry. Leonardo's life epitomizes the concept of the universal man, or polymath, of the Renaissance. He was a painter, sculptor, architect, musician, scientist, inventor, anatomist, geologist, cartographer, botanist, and writer. He was arguably the most curious human being who ever lived, a person whose intellect recognized no disciplinary boundaries. His approach was always empirical, always based on direct observation and experimentation, a true harbinger of the scientific method that would fully emerge centuries later. He didn't just theorize, he looked, he drew, he dissected, he questioned, and he tried to understand. The influence of Leonardo is immeasurable and continues to resonate in countless ways. In the arts, his sfumato technique revolutionized painting, creating a new standard for subtlety and psychological depth. His anatomical studies laid the groundwork for a more realistic and expressive depiction of the human form, influencing generations of artists. In science and engineering, though many of his inventions were not built in his lifetime, his detailed designs for flying machines, tanks, and hydraulics were astonishingly prescient, foreshadowing future technological advancements. More profoundly, his integrated approach, the idea that one must study nature and its laws to truly understand and represent it, laid the groundwork for the scientific revolution. He taught us to look beyond the surface, to question, to observe, and to connect seemingly disparate fields of knowledge. His legacy is not just in the few masterpieces he completed, but in the boundless curiosity he represents, in the spirit of inquiry he embodied. As you now drift deeper into the quiet embrace of sleep, let the image of Leonardo da Vinci's boundless mind fill your consciousness. From the curious boy in Vinci who watched the birds, to the polymath of Milan who filled countless notebooks with futuristic inventions, to the gentle sage of Amboise, tirelessly organized in his lifetime of observations, his journey was a testament to the infinite potential of human curiosity. May the beauty of his creations, the wisdom of his observations, and the quiet wonder of his endless quest for understanding guide your own dreams into a night of profound discoveries and tranquil rest. As the gentle twilight deepens and the world outside begins its slow hush, let your mind drift softly, effortlessly, back in time. Journey with me to the heart of the Italian Renaissance, to a city that glittered with gold, buzzed with ideas, and vibrated with artistic energy, Florence. Imagine its narrow, cobbled streets alive with the sounds of commerce and creation, the distant chimes of church bells mingling with the rhythmic hammering from countless workshops. It's into this vibrant tapestry of the mid-15th century that our story's protagonist, Alessandro di Mariano di Vanni Filippi, was born around 1445, though history knows him by a name that rolls off the tongue with a softer, more poetic cadence. Sandro Botticelli. His birth name rooted him firmly in the bustling reality of Florentine life. The origin of his famous nickname, Botticelli, which means little barrel, is a charming, if somewhat uncertain, detail. Some believe it came from his elder brother, Giovanni, who was indeed rather stout and given the moniker, which then somehow transferred to the younger, more slender Alessandro. Others suggest it might have referred to their father's trade as a tanner or a dealer in wine. Whatever its precise genesis, the name stuck, becoming synonymous with grace, beauty, and the lyrical spirit of the Florentine Renaissance. Imagine young Alessandro growing up in the Oltrarno district, a lively hub across the Arno River, known for its artisans and craftsmen. Unlike some of his contemporaries who found their way to painting through early drawing, Botticelli's first foray into the world of creative precision led him down a different, yet equally intricate, path. His initial apprenticeship was not with a painter, but with a goldsmith. This was a common and highly respected profession in Renaissance Florence, demanding an extraordinary level of skill, patience, and meticulous detail. Picture the goldsmith's workshop. The intense heat from the crucible, the delicate clinking of tiny tools against precious metals, the glint of gold and silver as they were shaped and burnished. Imagine the rich, earthy smell of the metals, perhaps mingling with the faint scent of charcoal and polishing compounds. Here, young Alessandro would have learned the foundational elements of craftsmanship: the precise control of his hands, the unwavering focus required for intricate work, and almost obsessive attention to line work and detail. He learned to chase and emboss metal, to set precious stones, to create delicate filigree, and understand how light played across complex surfaces. This early training instilled in him profound appreciation for linear precision, for the graceful flow of form, and for the decorative elegance that would become a hallmark of his later paintings. The skill of outlining figures with exquisite grace, a defining characteristic of Botticelli's unique style, undoubtedly finds its roots in these formative years spent meticulously shaping precious metals. This initial apprenticeship was crucial, but it soon became clear that Alessandro's true calling lay not in the intricate world of jewelry, but in the broader, more expressive realm of painting. By his mid-teens, around 1464, his talents had evidently progressed to a point where his father arranged for him to enter a painter's workshop. This pivotal moment led him to the studio of Fra Filippo Lippi, a Carmelite friar and one of the most beloved and influential painters of his time. Lippi, himself a fascinating and unconventional figure, brought a unique blend of human warmth, lyrical grace, and emotional depth to his religious subjects. Imagine the atmosphere in Lippi's studio. It would have been different from the goldsmith's shop, perhaps a bit more bustling, with the scent of linseed oil and turpentine, the softer swish of brushes, and the quiet murmur of models posing. Under Lippi's tutelage, Botticelli absorbed the fundamental techniques of painting prevalent in Florence. He learned the art of fresco, painting on wet plaster for large murals, though his later preferences would lean towards panel painting. He mastered tempera, a versatile medium using egg yolk as a binder, which allowed for brilliant colors and sharp detail, a medium that Botticelli would elevate to unparalleled levels of luminosity and precision. He honed his drawing skills, developing a masterful control of line that could convey both the delicate contours of face and the voluminous folds of drapery. He studied composition, learning how to arrange figures within a narrative space to create balance, harmony, and dramatic effect. But beyond the technical skills, it was Lippi's distinctive style that had the most profound impact on the young Botticelli. Lippi's figures were characterized by their lyrical quality, their graceful movements, and their often gentle, yet deeply felt, emotional depth. His Madonnas were tender and human, his angels ethereal and innocent. Botticelli absorbed this sensibility, learning to infuse his figures with distinct melancholy or a dreamy innocence that went beyond mere physical beauty. Imagine him watching Lippi paint, observing the way his master rendered the transparent veils, the flowing hair, the delicate gestures, elements that would become iconic in Botticelli's own work. It was from Lippi that Botticelli inherited a love for the decorative line and a graceful, almost dance-like quality in his figures. After approximately 4 to 5 years under Lippi, Botticelli began to emerge as an independent master. His early independent works immediately showed immense promise, clearly demonstrating the influence of his teacher, but already infused with his own emerging, unique voice. You can see Lippi's lyrical grace in the gentle curves and delicate expressions, yet there's a newfound vitality, a sharper, more defined linear precision that speaks to his goldsmithing past. Paintings from this period, such as his early Madonnas or portraits, reveal an artist deeply attuned to the Florentine artistic trends of the time, absorbing lessons from masters like Masaccio for his powerful forms and Donatello for his emotional realism, yet subtly weaving them into a style that was unmistakably his own. This period of his youth was set against a backdrop of an incredibly vibrant intellectual and artistic atmosphere in Florence. The city, under the de facto rule of the powerful Medici family, particularly Lorenzo de' Medici, the Magnificent, was a crucible of new ideas. Scholars, poets, philosophers, and artists gathered in academies and salons, debating classical texts, exploring Neoplatonic philosophy, which sought to reconcile classical thought with Christian theology, and pushing the boundaries of human knowledge and creativity. Imagine the lively discussions, the challenging debates, the constant influx of new ideas that would have permeated the city's air. Botticelli, still a young man, would have been part of this extraordinary cultural ferment, absorbing not just artistic techniques, but also the intellectual currents that shaped the very spirit of the Renaissance. This environment encouraged innovation, fostered intellectual curiosity, and celebrated the power of human ingenuity. His time in Florence during these formative years was a profound journey of discovery, from the meticulous precision learned at the goldsmith's bench to the lyrical grace absorbed from Filippo Lippi's brush. Alessandro Filippi was slowly, steadily, transforming into the Botticelli we know. His innate talent, combined with the unparalleled training and the stimulating intellectual environment of Renaissance Florence, forged an artist poised to create works of breathtaking beauty and enduring mystery. As you settle into your peaceful slumber, envision the bustling streets, the scent of the workshops, and the quiet dedication of a young apprentice whose hands were learning not just a craft, but the very language of beauty that would speak across centuries. As the last echoes of the goldsmith's hammer and the quiet lessons from Fra Filippo Lippi faded, Sandro Botticelli, now a young master, found himself drawn into the most influential orbit in Florence, that of the Medici family. This powerful banking dynasty, particularly Lorenzo de' Medici, the Magnificent, was not merely a political force. They were the quintessential patrons of the Renaissance, cultivating a vibrant intellectual and artistic climate unlike anywhere else in Europe. Under their discerning eye and generous hand, Botticelli would truly blossom, creating the magnificent, enigmatic works that define his legacy and the very spirit of Florentine Renaissance art. Imagine the atmosphere within the Medici Palace and their villas. It was a place where art, philosophy, poetry, and classical scholarship converged. Lorenzo de' Medici himself was a poet and a scholar, surrounding himself with brilliant minds like the philosopher Marsilio Ficino and the poet Angelo Poliziano. These thinkers were deeply engrossed in Neoplatonism, a philosophical movement that sought to reconcile ancient Greek Platonic ideas with Christian theology. They believed that earthly beauty was a reflection of divine beauty, and that human love could elevate the soul towards the spiritual realm. This intellectual ferment, this blend of classical humanism and spiritual introspection, infused the very air that Botticelli breathed and became the fertile ground for his most iconic creations. It was within this rarefied atmosphere that Botticelli found not just commissions, but inspiration. He became a favorite artist of Lorenzo and his close circle, a master capable of translating their complex philosophical ideas and poetic verses into breathtaking visual form. His paintings from this period moved beyond purely religious subjects, embracing classical mythology and allegory with an unprecedented scale and depth. This was truly innovative. While classical themes had appeared in Renaissance art before, Botticelli elevated them to monumental, central positions, imbuing them with layers of meaning that spoke to the sophisticated intellect of his patrons. Let your mind drift now to a masterpiece that perfectly embodies this blend of beauty, myth, and philosophy, primavera or spring. Imagine a vast, lush garden, bathed in an eternal, soft twilight. It's not just any garden. It's a mythical grove, filled with oranges, a subtle nod to the Medici family's crest, which featured golden balls reminiscent of oranges. In this garden, 9 figures from classical mythology are arranged in a tableau of ethereal grace, seemingly floating on the grass adorned with hundreds of meticulously painted flowers. On the far right, the forceful, greenish figure Zephyrus, the west wind, chases and abducts the nymph Chloris, whose mouth is spilling flowers. As his cold breath touches her, she transforms, almost magically, into Flora, the goddess of flowers and spring, depicted in a beautiful floral dress, scattering blossoms with serene gesture. This sequence symbolizes the raw, untamed forces of nature, giving way to the beauty and fertility of spring. Imagine the vibrant blues of Zephyrus, the soft green of Chloris transforming into a riot of color on Flora's dress, each tiny flower exquisitely rendered. In the center, subtly set back and gently framed by an arch of orange trees, stands Venus, the goddess of love and beauty. She is exquisitely beautiful, her gaze contemplative and slightly melancholic, a vision of idealized human perfection. Above her, her blindfolded son Cupid aims his arrow of love towards the three Graces, three ethereal female figures who embody chastity, beauty, and voluptuous pleasure. Imagine their translucent drapery, flowing with impossible lightness, their hands intertwined in a graceful, almost dance-like movement. They symbolize the harmonious gifts of human love and beauty. On the far left, Mercury, identified by his winged sandals and caduceus, gently dispels any lingering winter clouds with a staff, ensuring the eternal spring. Primavera is a tapestry of allegorical meanings, woven with threads of love, fertility, and humanism. It's a celebration of renewal, of nature's bounty, and of the transformative power of love. Its beauty lies not just in the individual figures, but in the way they interact, forming a poetic dance across the canvas. Botticelli's distinctive style is evident in every detail. The graceful, flowing lines that define each figure, the way their hair seems to ripple and dance in an unseen breeze, and the incredibly vibrant colors that give the painting an almost jewel-like intensity. The figures possess an ethereal quality, almost weightless, their feet barely touching the ground, emphasizing their mythological, otherworldly nature. It is a dream rendered tangible, a visual poem that invites endless interpretation. Even more iconic, perhaps, is The Birth of Venus. Imagine this colossal painting, almost 6 by 9 feet, emerging like a vision from a dream. It depicts the moment Venus, the goddess of love, beauty, and fertility, arrives on land, having been born fully formed from the sea foam, or in some myths, from the severed genitals of Uranus. She stands on a colossal scallop shell, floating serenely on the gentle waves. On the left, the wind gods Zephyr and Aura embrace as they blow rose petals gently toward her, their powerful breaths creating a dynamic counterpoint to Venus's stillness. On the right, a nymph, perhaps one of the Hours, rushes forward to clothe Venus with a magnificent cloak adorned with spring flowers, her hair and dress also caught in ethereal breeze. The Birth of Venus is an image of idealized beauty captured with unparalleled grace. Venus herself is depicted with serene, almost detached expression, her long, golden hair flowing around her like a living garment. Her body, while anatomically perfect, possesses a soft, almost luminous quality, distinct from the more muscular figures of classical sculpture. Imagine the incredible detail in the wind-blown hair and fabric, each strand, each fold, rendered with such exquisite precision and delicacy that you can almost feel the gentle zephyr. This attention to fluid lines and graceful movement, reminiscent of his goldsmithing background, defines her ethereal presence. These large-scale mythological paintings, Primavera and The Birth of Venus, were profoundly innovative for their time. While religious art remained the dominant form of patronage, Botticelli, under the Medici's influence, boldly ventured into subjects drawn from classical antiquity. This shift was a clear reflection of the humanist spirit of the Renaissance, which rediscovered and celebrated the wisdom, beauty, and literature of ancient Greece and Rome. They weren't mere illustrations of classical stories. They were complex allegories, designed to stimulate intellectual discussion and embody the Neoplatonic ideal that the contemplation of beauty, earthly and classical, could lead to the understanding of divine truth. They asserted that art could be a vehicle for profound philosophical exploration, not just religious instruction. Throughout these works, Botticelli's distinctive style shines with unparalleled clarity. His figures, whether pagan goddesses or Christian saints, possess an inherent gracefulness, characterized by elongated limbs, delicate hands, and a certain ethereal quality that makes them seem almost weightless. His mastery of line is paramount. Each contour is drawn with an exquisite precision that gives his figures their unique definition and elegant flow. His vibrant colors, often applied in a luminous tempera, contribute to the dreamlike quality, giving his paintings a jewel-like intensity that draws the eye and holds the gaze. There's a certain melancholy, a sweet seriousness in the eyes of his figures, even the most joyous scenes, hinting at a deeper contemplative spirit. The patronage of the Medici family was truly crucial for Botticelli. It not only provided him with the financial security and commissions he needed, but, more importantly, exposed him to the cutting edge of Renaissance thought. He was part of a circle that valued not just artistic skill, but intellectual curiosity, philosophical debate, and the poetic interpretation of both classical myths and Christian dogma. This environment allowed his unique genius to flourish, enabling him to create works that transcended mere depiction, becoming profound statements on beauty, love, and the human condition. As you settle deeper into your restful slumber, let the images of Botticelli's magnificent paintings gently fill your mind. Imagine the lush, allegorical garden of Primavera, the ethereal beauty of the birth of Venus, and the graceful figures that seem to dance through a dream. Allow the vibrant colors and fluid lines to soothe your thoughts, guiding you into a night filled with beautiful visions and profound peace. Botticelli's art, born under the wing of the Medici, remains an eternal testament to the power of beauty to transcend time and speak directly to the soul. As the ethereal figures of Venus and Primavera shimmered with poetic beauty in the Medici villas, Sandro Botticelli was simultaneously engaged in a profound and continuous dedication to sacred art. It is a testament to his versatile genius that, even as he captivated Florence with his mythological allegories, he consistently produced a wealth of deeply moving religious works. His brush was equally adept at portraying the classical ideal as it was at rendering the tender intimacy of the Virgin Mary or the solemnity of biblical narratives. Imagine his studio during these years, perhaps with the scent of lilies often associated with the Virgin Mary. Mingling with the linseed oil, he painted numerous Madonnas, each infused with a unique blend of human warmth and divine grace. These weren't just iconic religious figures. They were mothers holding their children, their gazes often tinged with delicate melancholy, hinting at the future suffering of Christ. Consider the Madonna of the Magnificat or the Madonna of the Pomegranate, where Mary's serene beauty is almost overwhelmed by the intricate symbolism, her head often tilted, a wistful expression on her face. Botticelli's Madonnas, with their refined features, delicate hands, and flowing draperies, became immensely popular, embodying a particular Florentine ideal of sacred beauty, accessible yet sublime. The gold leaf often employed in the halos or background of these works harks back to his goldsmithing roots, adding a luminous, almost jewel-like quality that elevates the divine. Beyond these intimate devotional pieces, Botticelli excelled at grander biblical narratives. His adoration of the Magi, a recurring theme in Florentine art, is a masterpiece from this period that showcases his exceptional skill in composition and portraiture. Imagine this scene: the three kings richly attired, kneeling before the humble Holy Family. But in Botticelli's version, the scene is transformed into a vibrant gathering of prominent Florentine citizens, many of them members of the Medici family and their close associates. Lorenzo the Magnificent himself is said to be among the figures, perhaps as a young king on the far left. Botticelli himself is believed to be present in the painting, looking directly out at the viewer from the far right, a subtle and rare self-portrait. This inclusion of contemporary figures within a sacred narrative was a popular trend, allowing patrons to visualize themselves participating in a holy event. The painting is a rich tapestry of figures, expressions, and luxurious details, a testament to his ability to weave complex narratives with individual portraits. Then, an extraordinary opportunity arose, one that would take Botticelli far from the familiar cloisters and palaces of Florence to the very heart of Christendom, Rome. In the early 1480s, Pope Sixtus IV embarked on a grand project to renovate and adorn the walls of his newly constructed chapel within the Vatican Palace, which would soon become world famous as the Sistine Chapel. For this monumental task, the Pope summoned the most renowned painters from Florence and Umbria. This was a signal honor, a testament to Botticelli's already formidable reputation. He traveled to Rome alongside other great masters of the era, including Perugino, Domenico Ghirlandaio, Botticelli's former master, and Cosimo Rosselli. Imagine the excitement, the intellectual exchange, and perhaps a touch of competitive spirit among these artistic titans, gathered in Rome to create a visual testament to papal authority and Christian history. Botticelli was entrusted with painting 3 large frescoes on the chapel walls, each presenting a complex biblical narrative: the punishment of the sons of Korah, the temptations of Christ, and the life of Moses. Each fresco had a specific theological and political purpose, designed to visually reinforce papal supremacy and the divine authority of the Church. These were not mere decorative pieces. They were powerful visual sermons. Imagine working within the cavernous, still unfinished Sistine Chapel, the air filled with the dust of construction and the scent of wet plaster. The challenge of painting large-scale frescoes was immense, even for experienced masters. It required meticulous planning, precise drawing, often with preparatory cartoons, and rapid, confident execution on the damp intonaco, the final layer of plaster. The light conditions could be challenging, and the sheer scale demanded not just artistic skill, but physical endurance. Let's visualize the punishment of the sons of Korah. This fresco is a powerful visual argument for papal authority, depicting a biblical event where God punishes rebellious Levites who challenge Moses and Aaron's divinely appointed leadership. Botticelli's unique narrative approach in these frescoes is evident here. He often combined multiple scenes from the story into a single, cohesive composition, creating a dynamic visual flow. In this specific fresco, you can see three distinct moments. On the right, Korah and his followers are attempting to offer incense, challenging the priesthood. In the center, Moses, identified by his staff and a rays of light from his head, calls down divine judgment. And on the left, the earth swallows the rebels, and those who remain alive are struck down by fire from heaven. In the background, the Arch of Constantine is depicted, symbolizing papal continuity with imperial power. Imagine the intricate details, the expressive faces of the figures, and the dramatic tension Botticelli captured in this complex historical narrative. The scale of the figures, the grandeur of the setting, and the precise execution speak volumes about his command of the fresco medium. Next, consider the temptations of Christ. This fresco depicts three key moments from the Gospels where Satan attempts to sway Jesus. Imagine the towering figure of Christ, calmly resisting temptation. On the left, Satan, disguised as a friar, urges Jesus to turn stones into bread. In the center, they stand atop the Temple of Jerusalem, with Satan daring Jesus to throw himself down. On the right, Satan, revealing his true demonic form, offers Jesus earthly power in exchange for worship. Below, in the foreground, Botticelli added a scene of ritual sacrifice, subtly contrasting the old covenant with the new, and further emphasizing the divine legitimacy of Christ and, by extension, the papacy. Notice the delicate landscape details, the expressive gestures, and the way Botticelli uses light to highlight the spiritual significance of each encounter. Finally, think of the life of Moses. This long, horizontal fresco is a vivid narrative of Moses' early life and leadership, again combining multiple scenes into one fluid composition. You can see Moses slaying the Egyptian, fleeing into Midian, helping the daughters of Jethro at the well, encountering God at the burning bush, and finally, leading the Israelites out of Egypt. Imagine the vibrant colors used to depict the desert landscape, the dynamic action of the figures, and the way Botticelli infuses even the most dramatic moments with his characteristic elegance and lyrical quality. The fresco tells a sweeping story, illustrating God's covenant with Moses and foreshadowing the role of the Pope as God's chosen leader on earth. Working in Rome was a significant challenge and experience for Botticelli. He was immersed in the grandeur of ancient Roman ruins, an environment that would have further stimulated his understanding of classical forms and monumental scale. More importantly, he worked alongside other towering figures of his time. This collaborative yet competitive atmosphere pushed each artist to excel. Imagine the opportunity to observe Perugino's serene compositions, Ghirlandaio's masterful storytelling, and Rosselli's vibrant palettes up close. This interchange of ideas and techniques undoubtedly broadened Botticelli's artistic vocabulary, even as he retained his distinctive personal style. After completing his monumental commissions in the Sistine Chapel, Botticelli returned to Florence in 1482. He came back not merely as a talented artist, but as a recognized master who had successfully undertaken a high-profile papal commission alongside the greatest painters of Italy. His reputation was further solidified, and his success continued for several years after his return. He received new commissions for both religious and secular works, maintaining his position as one of Florence's most sought-after artists. The lyrical beauty, precise line work, and emotional depth that characterized his paintings continued to evolve, captivating patrons and solidifying his place in the pantheon of Renaissance masters. As you now drift into deeper slumber, let the grand narratives of Botticelli's sacred frescoes and the serene beauty of his Madonnas fill your mind. Imagine the vibrant colors of the Sistine Chapel walls, telling stories of divine judgment and sacred leadership, all painted by the same hand that gave us Venus and Primavera. Allow the echoes of his artistic journey, from the intimate devotional piece to the monumental biblical epic, to soothe your thoughts and guide you into a night of peaceful, contemplative dreams. As the 15th century drew to a close, casting long, shifting shadows across the sun-drenched squares of Florence, the city that had once celebrated the humanist ideals of beauty and classical learning began to undergo a dramatic and profound transformation. The air, once filled with the lyrical verses of poets and the philosophical debates of scholars, grew heavy with the thunderous pronouncements of a single, powerful voice. This voice belonged to Girolamo Savonarola, a Dominican friar who arrived in Florence in the late 1480s and quickly rose to become a dominant, even terrifying, figure in its spiritual and political life. Imagine the friar standing in the Duomo, his gaunt figure radiating an almost hypnotic intensity, his voice echoing through the vast space. Savonarola preached with a fiery, unyielding passion, condemning the rampant secularism, vanity, and corruption he perceived rampant in Florentine society, especially within the church itself and the indulgent lifestyle of the wealthy. He prophesied divine wrath, urging Florentines to repent, to cast aside their worldly possessions, and to embrace a life of ascetic piety. His sermons, delivered with apocalyptic fervor, captivated the masses, particularly after the Medici family was expelled from Florence in 1494. The city, already destabilized by political upheaval, found itself gripped by a wave of religious zealotry. For an artist like Botticelli, who had thrived under the very patronage that celebrated beauty and classical mythology, Savonarola's rise represented a profound challenge. Botticelli, with his contemplative nature and his deep, underlying piety, was no stranger to religious themes. He had, after all, painted numerous Madonnas and biblical narratives with sincere devotion. However, Savonarola's message was absolute. Art that celebrated pagan themes or emphasized worldly beauty was sinful, a distraction from true spiritual devotion. Works of art, opulent clothing, mirrors, musical instruments, and anything deemed vanities were condemned as temptations leading souls astray. The culmination of this fervent piety was the infamous bonfire of the vanities. Imagine the Piazza della Signoria, usually a place of joyous festivals and public spectacles, transformed into a pyre. On Shrove Tuesday, 1497, and again in 1498, vast piles of condemned objects were set ablaze. These bonfires included secular books, gambling equipment, luxurious clothes, cosmetics, and, significantly, works of art deemed immoral or idolatrous. Account from the period suggests that many Florentines, genuinely moved by Savonarola's sermons, willingly threw their precious possessions onto the flames. The extent of Botticelli's personal participation in these bonfires remains a subject of historical debate. Yet it is widely rumored and believed that he, too, was swept up in the friars' zealous movement. Imagine the internal turmoil he must have faced. The artist who had painted the ethereal Venus and the blossoming Primavera, now grappling with the idea that these very creations might be considered pagan and vanities in the eyes of God. It is entirely plausible that Botticelli, deeply affected by Savonarola's powerful messages and perhaps genuinely convinced of the coming spiritual reckoning, burned some of his own pagan works or sketches, renouncing the very subjects that had brought him such fame. This act, whether literal or symbolic, represents a profound personal and artistic crisis, a renunciation of the worldly beauty he had so masterfully depicted. Botticelli developed a deep personal connection to Savonarola's teachings and prophecies. He frequented the friar's sermons, becoming a devout follower. This spiritual awakening, this intense focus on repentance and divine judgment, profoundly impacted his psyche and inevitably his art. His earlier, more joyful and graceful works gave way to a noticeable shift in his later religious paintings. The serene, idealized beauty of his earlier Madonnas began to morph into something different. These later works exhibit an increased intensity and emotional depth, often conveyed through starker compositions and a more somber palette. There is less focus on worldly beauty for its own sake, and a greater emphasis on spiritual truth and a sense of impending divine revelation. His figures, while still retaining his characteristic linear elegance, often appear more agitated, more inwardly focused, their expressions carrying a weight of spiritual contemplation or even anguish. The decorative flourishes of his earlier work become more restrained, almost austere, as if the worldly distractions have been stripped away to reveal a starker, more profound spiritual reality. A powerful example of this transformation is his Mystic Nativity, painted in 1500. Imagine this painting, bursting with complex symbolism and an almost hallucinatory intensity. Unlike traditional nativity scenes, Botticelli fills the sky with angels dancing in a joyous circle, their arms intertwined, holding olive branches that symbolize peace. Below, shepherds and wise men adore the Christ child, their faces filled with wonder. But beneath this apparent joy, a more unsettling scene unfolds. Demons retreat into fissures in the earth, and small, embracing figures, possibly representing human and angelic reconciliation, emerge from the ground, symbolizing the overcoming of sin and the coming of a new age. The inscription at the top of the painting, in Greek, speaks of the troubles of Italy and a prophecy about the renewal in the time of the second woe. This directly references Savonarola's prophecies, which had predicted a period of tribulation followed by a spiritual rebirth for Florence. The painting feels crowded, intense, almost visionary, reflecting the apocalyptic fervor that gripped Florence at the turn of the century. It is a work deeply personal and profoundly allegorical, a testament to Botticelli's unwavering belief in Savonarola's message. Another late work, such as A Lamentation over the Dead Christ, circa 1490 to 1492, showcases his heightened emotionality. Imagine Mary's face, contorted in grief, holding her dead son with a raw, agonizing tenderness. The figures are tightly composed, creating a sense of intense claustrophobia, emphasizing the profound sorrow of the moment. These late religious works are often less immediately beautiful in a conventional sense than his Primavera or Venus, but they are undeniably more emotionally potent, reflecting a deeper spiritual engagement and the turmoil of his age. Simultaneously with these profound personal and artistic shifts, the decline of Medici patronage significantly impacted Botticelli's career. With the expulsion of the Medici, the humanist and Neoplatonic circles that had nurtured his mythological works dissolved. The new Florentine Republic, influenced by Savonarola's puritanical ideals, favored simpler, more austere forms of religious art or monumental civic projects that glorified the Republic rather than individual patrons. This changing artistic landscape in Florence meant that Botticelli, whose unique style was so intimately tied to the Medici's refined tastes, found fewer commissions. Younger artists like Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Raphael, with their different stylistic approaches and often grander ambitions, began to dominate the artistic scene, signaling a new direction for the High Renaissance. As Savonarola's influence waned, he was eventually excommunicated and executed in 1498. Florence slowly recovered from its spiritual fever. However, the experience had left an indelible mark on Botticelli. He never truly regained the widespread popularity or the specific type of patronage he had enjoyed during the Medici Golden Age. His later years would be marked by a quieter, more solitary existence, far from the bustling artistic center he had once dominated. Yet, the profound spiritual journey he undertook during Savonarola's reign, the shift from worldly beauty to a more intense, personal piety, left us with some of his most complex and emotionally resonant works, providing unique insight into the soul of a genius grappling with faith in a turbulent world. As you now drift into deeper slumber, let the somber intensity of Savonarola's sermons and the spiritual depth of Botticelli's later works guide your thoughts. Imagine a world where beauty and piety wrestled for the human soul, and an artist's heart responded with profound honesty. May the emotional resonance of these powerful narratives soothe your spirit, inviting a night of peaceful and reflective dreams. As the fervent echoes of Savonarola's fiery sermons gradually faded from the Florentine air, and the city cautiously began to rebuild its cultural identity, Sandro Botticelli found himself entering the final, quieter chapter of his remarkable life. The turn of the 16th century marked a significant shift in the artistic landscape, one that subtly, yet irrevocably, move away from the lyrical grace and linear beauty that had defined his golden age. The world of art was on the cusp of a new era, and the tastes of patrons were evolving, leaving behind the very style Botticelli had helped to perfect. Imagine the gentle decline, not a sudden fall, but a gradual fading of the spotlight. As the new century unfolded, Botticelli found his commissions dwindling. The magnificent Medici family, his most ardent patrons, were either exiled or less influential, their artistic preferences now reflecting a different cultural climate. Moreover, a new generation of artistic giants was rising, commanding attention with their innovative approaches. Names like Leonardo da Vinci, with his mastery of sfumato and scientific realism, Michelangelo, with his monumental, powerfully sculpted figures, and the young Raphael, with his harmonious compositions and classical grace, were now the darlings of the art world. Their styles represented the future, a high renaissance characterized by dynamic movement, profound psychological depth, and an almost sculptural solidity in painting that differed significantly from Botticelli's ethereal lines and vibrant, yet flattened, figures. This shift in artistic preference meant that Botticelli, once at the zenith of Florentine painting, found himself increasingly out of step with the prevailing trends. His exquisite linear style, once seen as elegant and refined, was now perceived by some as somewhat old-fashioned, even archaic. His detailed compositions, filled with intricate symbolism, might have seemed less direct than the grand, unified narratives of the younger masters. The bustling activity of his once thriving workshop slowed, replaced by a growing quietude. This period of his later life was marked by increasing isolation and a decline into relative poverty, as famously documented by Giorgio Vasari, the renowned biographer of Renaissance artists. Vasari, while acknowledging Botticelli's earlier brilliance, painted a rather melancholic picture of his final years, describing him as old and poor, unable to work and relying on the charity of his former patrons. While the extent of his poverty might be exaggerated by Vasari, the sentiment of his diminished status and increasing solitude rings true. Imagine him in his studio, perhaps less frequented by eager young apprentices or wealthy patrons, spending his days in quiet contemplation, his thoughts turning increasingly inward, away from the clamor of worldly artistic pursuits. Despite the reduction in commissions and his declining health, Botticelli's creative spirit never entirely extinguished. He continued to draw and produce some later works, though these are often strikingly different from his celebrated mythological or early religious pieces. These later paintings frequently possess a more archaic, almost medieval feel, as if he were deliberately turning away from the burgeoning naturalism of the High Renaissance and returning to an earlier, more spiritualized form of art. The figures can appear more rigid, less concerned with anatomical perfection, and sometimes more intensely expressive, almost raw in their emotion. This stylistic evolution might reflect a personal choice, a further deepening of his piety influenced by Savonarola, or simply the natural progression of a highly individual artist refusing to conform to external trends. In these later works, his focus on line and emotional expression became even more pronounced, sometimes at the expense of anatomical precision or realistic perspective. Where Leonardo and Michelangelo pushed the boundaries of three-dimensional illusion, Botticelli re-emphasized the decorative power of the two-dimensional surface. His lines became vehicles for conveying pure emotion, spiritual yearning, or allegorical meaning. Imagine a face, etched with a quiet sadness or intense devotion, its expressiveness conveyed through the subtle curve of a lip or the delicate arch of an eyebrow, rather than through complex musculature. This made his style even more unique and distinctive, standing apart from the mainstream of the emerging Renaissance grand style. He wasn't trying to emulate the younger masters. He was refining his own profound artistic language. One could imagine him spending his days lost in his drawings, perhaps revisiting biblical themes with a renewed sense of personal urgency, or sketching figures that embody the abstract spiritual concepts that now occupied his thoughts. These were not works intended for a wide public, but perhaps for personal devotion, or for a very select few who still appreciated his unique vision. Sandro Botticelli passed away on May 17, 1510, in his beloved Florence, the city that had witnessed his humble beginnings, his meteoric rise, and his quiet decline. He was buried in the cemetery of the Ognissanti Church, the same church where his former master, Fra Filippo Lippi, had also been laid to rest and where many members of his family were interred. His burial place, within the quiet confines of a local church, rather than a grand tomb, perhaps subtly reflects the more subdued end to a career that had once shone so brightly. For centuries after his death, Botticelli's genius remained largely overlooked. His works often confined to private collections or simply not held in the same esteem as those of the high Renaissance titans. He was deemed old-fashioned by later generations. His linear style and often flattened figures considered less advanced than the anatomical realism and dramatic compositions of Michelangelo or Raphael. Critics, conditioned by the standard of classical realism that dominated artistic thought for centuries, found his work quaint, decorative, perhaps charming, but not profoundly significant. He was a master of a fleeting moment, overshadowed by the giants who followed him. His mythological allegories were often misunderstood or simply dismissed as pagan curiosities. His spiritual intensity was perhaps too subtle or too personal for the broader sweep of art history. Imagine his canvases, gathering dust in forgotten corners, admired by a few connoisseurs but largely absent from the grand narratives of art history. This relative obscurity for centuries is a poignant testament to how artistic tastes and historical narratives can ebb and flow, sometimes burying true genius beneath layers of changing fashion. Yet, like the sleeping beauty in a fairy tale, Botticelli's art awaited its awakening. As you settle deeper into your serene slumber, reflect on the quiet resilience of Botticelli's final years. Imagine the old master pursue his art not for fame or fortune, but out of an enduring love for line, for expression, and for the spiritual truths he sought to convey. His story is a gentle reminder that true genius, even when temporarily obscured by the shifting current of time and taste, possesses an enduring spirit that ultimately cannot be confined. His quiet retirement was merely a pause, a moment of reflection before his ultimate rebirth in the eyes of a world finally ready to understand and adore him once more. As the quiet curtain fell on Sandro Botticelli's life in the early 16th century, his art, so deeply rooted in the unique spirit of Florentine humanism and later Savonarola's piety, slowly faded from widespread public consciousness. For nearly 3 centuries, his luminous canvases, once celebrated by princes and popes, remained largely in obscurity. While treasured by a few connoisseurs, the prevailing artistic taste of subsequent eras, driven by the grandeur of the High Renaissance and later the Baroque, found his linear grace and ethereal figures less compelling than the monumental realism of Michelangelo or the dramatic dynamism of Caravaggio. He was, as we've seen, considered old-fashioned, a master of a passing era. But art, like history, has its own tides of rediscovery. Imagine the turn of the 19th century, a time far removed from Botticelli's Florence, when a new wave of artistic and intellectual thought began to challenge the rigid academic conventions of the era. It was in Victorian England, amidst the Industrial Revolution's utilitarianism and the prevailing focus on rigid realism, that a group of young, rebellious artists emerged, the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood. These artists, yearning for a return to purity and emotional depth they perceived in art before Raphael and the High Renaissance's emphasis on idealized, classical forms, began to look to earlier masters, and it was in this quest for authenticity and symbolic richness that they rediscovered Botticelli. Imagine the Pre-Raphaelites, perhaps leafing through dusty old prints or visiting forgotten collections, suddenly captivated by the strange, ethereal beauty of Botticelli's works. They found in his paintings precisely what they craved, an emphasis on linear grace rather than heavy modeling, a decorative quality that celebrated intricate detail, and profound mystical symbolism that hinted at deeper meanings beyond the literal. His flat background and elegant, sometimes elongated figures, which earlier generations had dismissed as primitive, resonated deeply with their own ideals of purity and symbolic expression. They appreciated his rejection of strict academic realism in favor of a more expressive, emotionally charged aesthetic. His dreamlike quality, the way his figures seemed to inhabit a world both earthly and otherworldly, struck a chord with the burgeoning aesthetic movement of the late 19th century. Writers like Walter Pater, with his evocative descriptions of the birth of Venus, championed Botticelli's unique blend of sensuous beauty and intellectual melancholy. Artists and poets alike became fascinated by his allegories, finding in him a rich vein of inspiration for their own explorations of beauty, myth, and spiritual longing. Imagine the excitement, the intellectual thrill of unearthing a forgotten genius, whose art seemed to speak directly to the very soul of their own artistic rebellion. It was this reevaluation by the pre-Raphaelites and the broader aesthetic movement that led to Botticelli's triumphant rise to prominence as one of the most beloved Renaissance artists. What was once dismissed as archaic was now celebrated as timeless. His works, once confined to obscure corners, were now lauded in galleries, reproduced in books, and admired by an ever-widening audience. His name, Botticelli, became a household word, synonymous with a particular brand of delicate, soulful beauty. The quiet genius, whose life ended in relative obscurity, was now, centuries later, finally receiving the global recognition he so richly deserved. His most famous works, Primavera and The Birth of Venus, quickly became icons of beauty and the very spirit of the Renaissance. They are not merely paintings. They are cultural touchstones, instantly recognizable symbols of art, love, and rebirth. Imagine their images now, adorning countless books, posters, and even everyday objects around the world. The Birth of Venus, with its exquisite depiction of idealized beauty, remains one of the most reproduced and celebrated paintings in history, its graceful lines and ethereal figure captivating new generations. Primavera, with its complex tapestry of mythological figures and lush symbolism, continues to invite endless interpretation, a visual feast that rewards prolonged contemplation. These paintings, once hidden gems, now stand as testaments to the enduring power of beauty to transcend time and culture, embodying the renewed fascination with classical ideals that blossomed in 15th century Florence. Botticelli's enduring impact lies in his singular mastery of line and composition, and his unparalleled ability to imbue figures with subtle emotion. He wasn't a master of scientific realism, in the same vein as Leonardo, nor of monumental sculpture like Michelangelo. Instead, his genius lay in the poetic flow of his lines, which defined form with an almost musical rhythm. Imagine the delicate contours of a face, the graceful sweep of drapery, or the intricate tangle of hair, each element rendered with precision and elegance that feels effortless, yet as a result of immense skill. His compositions, even when crowded with figures, maintain a clarity and balance, guiding the viewers either through a narrative or an allegorical dance. Beyond the formal elements, Botticelli possessed a profound gift for conveying subtle emotion. His figures, whether pagan goddesses or Christian saints, often carry a sense of melancholy, a wistful longing, or serene contemplation that speaks directly to the soul. It's not a dramatic, outward expression of feeling, but an inward gaze, a quiet intensity that draws the viewer closer, inviting empathy and reflection. This psychological depth, conveyed through the delicate tilt of a head, the soft curve of a lip, or the slight shadow in an eye, is a testament to his sensitive understanding of the human condition. His art whispers rather than shouts, inviting us into a world of delicate feeling and profound meaning. As we conclude our journey through the life of Sandro Botticelli, take a moment to reflect on his extraordinary trajectory, from a young goldsmith's apprentice, meticulously shaping precious metals and honing his eye for detail, to the celebrated master under the Medici, creating groundbreaking mythological allegories. Then, through the shadows of Savonarola, finding a renewed, more intense spiritual focus in his religious works, and finally, into a quiet retirement, seemingly forgotten by a changing world. Yet, his story doesn't end there. His art transcends time, rediscovered centuries later by those who long for beauty, line, and symbolic depth, finally taking its rightful place among the pantheon of the greatest artists. His graceful lines, his ethereal figures, and profound stories that tell continue to whisper tales of beauty, myth, and devotion across the ages. They remind us that true art speaks to the eternal human spirit, regardless of prevailing fashion or historical context. Botticelli's unique vision, once almost lost, now shines with enduring gentle grace, a testament to the power of a single artist to shape our understanding of beauty and to leave an indelible mark on the canvas of human culture. As you now yield fully to the embrace of sleep, may the lyrical beauty of Botticelli's lines and the gentle grace of his figures lead you into a night of serene dreams, where beauty is eternal and peace is profound. Drift effortlessly, knowing that the artistic journeys of the past continue to inspire and soothe, guiding you into a deep and restful slumber. Good night.